Straight up here with a chainsaw. Do you think that would?
All right. All right. Good evening, everybody. We're having some technical issues, but we will go ahead and get started. I think our streaming might be having some issues, so we apologize for that. But we'll go ahead and start tonight's meeting. So again, welcome Placerville to this meeting of the Placerville City Council for Tuesday, May 9th. Will everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Here.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Here.
Vice Mayor No?
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Here.
Mayor Saragosa?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item 3, we do have ceremonial matters, and we have a proclamation this evening. And that proclamation is for mental health awareness. So I'm going to go ahead and read that proclamation into the record. So this is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville declaring the month of May 2023 National Mental Health Awareness Month in the City of Placerville. Whereas the month of May has been declared National Mental Health Awareness Month, and whereas according to the U.S. Surgeon General, mental health is fundamental to our health and indispensable to personal well-being, family, and interpersonal relationships. And whereas 1 in 5 Americans will face mental health challenges each year, regardless of age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, or economic status. And whereas there are widespread misunderstandings and discrimination concerning mental health that can be eliminated by recognizing that mental health challenges are real, common, and treatable. And whereas National Mental Health Awareness Month is a time for communities to acknowledge the importance of mental health and take actions to ensure that individuals facing mental health challenges have access to the care, treatment, and prevention services that they need. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Placerville does hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 National Mental Health Awareness Month in the City of Placerville, dated today, May 9th, 2023. Thank you. Any comments? All right, thank you. Okay. We will then proceed to item 4. We did not have closed session this evening, so we'll move to item 5, which is the adoption of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Excuse me. Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along to item 6, which are announcements and presentations to the public, and item 6.1, which are brief comments by the City Council. Nicole.
I learned it is Jury Appreciation Week this week today at jury duty, so just sharing that with everyone that is Jury Appreciation Week this week.
Great, and thank you for doing your civic duty.
I would like to report that on Saturday, I went to the Taste of Main Street. Wonderful event, okay, wonderful event. But I want to tell you a little story because one of the discussions we had was about safety and the traffic and people in the area around the bell tower. So one of the meals I got was John Saunders had created this very nice macaroni cheese, but he used like the big eggshell pastas. I mean, it was really good. And so I got my thing, and Yvette got her thing, and I went over, and they had the water barriers out on Main Street, and I went and leaned against one, just kind of sitting there, you know, eating my thing, enjoying the music. It was great. These 2 very nice young ladies came over and said, "Sir, you'll have to move, because we're here to make sure that this area is safe and you can't be sitting here." And I just wanted to report back how diligent those folks were that ran the thing, the band group and all of that, and their steadfast observations of safety and moving me off of my rear end. So, and it was a wonderful event. So anyway, that's my story.
I like it. And I also like Councilmember being a scofflaw, leaning against the...
Yeah, you know, sometimes. You living life on the edge. You know how it is.
No, it was a great event. All right, David.
Nothing at this time.
All right, Vice Mayor.
I attended Rise and Shine on April 29th. A great event as always. We got a lot done, painting, cutting, weed eating. It's a great day, fun stuff. And on May 6th, I went to the Hands for Hope open house for the new Placerville Youth Center. So that's something exciting, new in town. Thanks.
All right. Same for me. I was at the Rise and Shine, and want to thank all of the Placerville residents who came out to help. I think we had over 140 folks, more or less, that were out there, which was fantastic. A lot of work done. Some of the cemeteries that don't always see a lot of TLC got that. And as a bonus for me, I got to drive home Dennis Thomas's tractor back to his house, which was awesome. So that was just like, I'll do whatever you want, just let me drive a tractor for a little bit. So that was great. I also attended the More fundraiser, was that two Saturdays ago? With John. We were both at the same spot. We had a heckler at our table of one of the comedians, so that did make it a little entertaining as well. But it's always a great event. They do a great job, and just thankful for the community for all of the funds that are raised for More. Okay. So we're going to move on then to item 6.2, which is to receive and file our social media report update. And I think Cleve's going to introduce this one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you recall, I think it was last September, we entered into this contract to try to do better outreach with our public. And we hired the firm of Bold Communications and Emily Eidelman to help us with that. And so with that, I will turn the time over to Emily to give us that report.
Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. We're really far ahead, sorry. So I'm just going to start with a brief introduction of myself and of Bold Communications because we have several new council members here, and they are probably not a little bit familiar with what we've got going on since last September. So about me, I am the founder and the owner of Bold Communications. I started it last May, and I've been doing public relations for approximately 7 years. So anything with social media management, marketing, branding, content creation, event planning, graphics design, video creation, all of those things. Those are all things that I am pretty decent at. So I am actually working to obtain a master's degree in digital audience strategy. I am a member of several organizations such as the Public Relations Society of America, the National Association of Women Business Owners, the El Dorado County Chamber of Commerce, and I also volunteer a lot of my time with many nonprofit organizations, some of which you guys are probably familiar with, such as the Miss El Dorado County Pageant, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northern Sierra, and Ponderosa Little League. I am a coach and a board member for that. So I just want to highlight a little bit on our contract, and not listed on this slide is actually the cost of the contract. Monthly, I invoice the city of Placerville for $2,900. However, you guys receive a 10% government discount. It's actually a little over 10%. And so the city of Placerville ends up paying $2,600 a month for my services. So with that, under our contract, I create engaging, organic social media campaigns. I create data-driven paid social campaigns. Fortunately, we actually have not had to do that, so we're not paying for advertising at this time for any reason. I track all of the campaigns, so I provide monthly updates and now quarterly updates to you guys as far as the progress goes for our social media campaigns. I also monitor and manage your social reputation. So anytime there's some misinformation, maybe on some of those local chat groups, I like to give Cleve a little bit of a heads up and say, okay, maybe we should address this and maybe correct some of that misinformation. And also under the contract, which we have not yet to do, we haven't needed to do, is press release writing and disbursement. We haven't really had any situations that would call for me to write a press release on behalf of the city of Placerville. So our goals. So the city of Placerville is currently focused on the growth and performance of its social media accounts on Facebook and Instagram. We have not invested in other platforms such as Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, Pinterest, etc. It is not a need at this time for the city. All growth is obtained organically and through the use of, and not through the use of digital advertisements, meaning, again, we're not putting extra money into ads or any of those things. It is all organic growth, which is a huge plus because, one, our followers are more likely to stick with us and engage with our content and pay attention to our content. And also, we're not spending extra money. So, again, huge plus. Our current strategy focuses on reliability, growth, and engagement. We provide information that we believe the public wants or needs to receive and obtain feedback from citizens as well to further this goal. So some campaigns that we run, they don't work as great as we hope. Sometimes people leave comments and they say, we need more information about this, or we want more information about that. And then that's when I get with Cleve or any of the department heads here and say, okay, what else can you give me? So we have used these platforms to reach the public directly and communicate with them the following information. So emergency updates such as traffic and construction, inclement weather, resources that are available to the public, especially during times like inclement weather, campaigns such as Trip to Green and Connect Placerville, the broadband, sorry, blanking on words, but we're looking at furthering broadband in the city of Placerville. We also fulfill grant requirements as well. So some of the grant funding that the city receives requires that we, release certain information to the public about those grants and our goals overall. And then, of course, we promote city events as well. So the metrics that I want you guys to pay attention to are these: followers, reach, and engagement. So our followers are the people who have subscribed to our pages. Reach is the number of people who have seen content from our page, which is different from impressions. And we value reach more than we do impressions because impressions, one person can view the same post 15 times. And so that's why you'll see that drastic increase in numbers. So we don't care too much about impressions. We care a little bit more about reach. And then engagement. So engagement is a way to track how our audience interacts with our content. So engagement includes likes, comments, shares. So this is a 90-day review from January to April on our Facebook content. As you can see, we're doing pretty good, actually. So our post reach has gone up significantly in 90 days. Prior to that, it was a little bit lower. We were a little over 50,000 reach on Facebook. And our engagement has also increased as well. And we really want the engagement. The reach is important, but we also want the engagement. That's how we're going to get the feedback from the public. And my favorite post, and apparently everyone else's, is this post right here. This was actually a photo that was submitted by a council member, and it was about the hard work that our city employees are doing during times of inclement weather. And as you can see, we received over 3,000 likes on this one post, over 60 comments, and over 400 shares. So that's pretty impressive, especially for something as simple as snow removal. And that same post also fared significantly well on Instagram, just FYI. So Instagram, we are still struggling, if I'm going to be completely honest. We're doing pretty well. We have increased our followers and our reach and our engagement, but the engagement is still a little bit lower than I'd like. However, that's for me to tweak and not for you to worry about. So it's really just me figuring out the type of content that our audience wants to see on Instagram, because our audience on Instagram is not necessarily the same audience that we have on Facebook. There's different age groups, genders, all of those things that kind of come into play when you're talking about Instagram versus Facebook. So if we look at our Facebook business comparison, so if we're reviewing other cities, we're actually doing pretty well. Again, we have over 5,700 followers on Facebook. When we signed this contract last September, the city only had about 2,100, 2,200 followers on Facebook, and the engagement was really, really low. And on Instagram, we had about 22 followers, and when I just checked today, there's over 250 followers. So that's honestly pretty good in a, 8-month time period. But it's not as great as some of the other cities. Like I said, we are still struggling just a little bit on Instagram, but it is a work in progress. So here's our quarterly report. Our page reach, we reach over 100,000 individuals on Facebook between September through December, and that's in quarter one. And on Instagram, we've reached over 210 people on Facebook between September and December. Quarter two is a lot better, actually. We reach over 239,000 individuals on Facebook between January and March. And on Instagram, we've reached over 400 individuals. And that's per post. So that's not just during this time. It's every time we post, this is on average how much we're reaching, just to put it into perspective. And I will take any questions.
All right. Thank you, Emily. Any questions? Seeing none. I know you're saying we're struggling on Instagram, but I'm wondering, is that just a product of 95667 preferring Facebook over Insta, for the most part?
It very well could be. Again, like I said, each platform has a different audience. And so you also have to look at, the demographics of our area of Placerville, because we're not going to get too many people, and we don't want too many people who live outside the city of Placerville to be following our pages and engaging with our content. I mean, it's great, but again, we're trying to reach people who live within the city who are concerned about what's happening within the city. And so primarily a lot of our demographic is on Facebook. And our current age range is actually between ages 35 and 60 on Facebook. So not a ton of those individuals are on Instagram, and that's okay.
That makes sense. I know the one thing I was looking at on, as we push information out, was Trip to Green, broadband, different things. If we ever do another Trip to Green in the future, if it wouldn't make sense maybe to put a few dollars behind it just to get more information out there to help the businesses, Main Street is open, those type of things, just to get a little bit more, as much as we can to get people to have more information and just to get, I guess, more used to it as well. That's something we can talk about later, but just wanted to, while I was thinking about it, I thought, it might not be bad to put a few dollars behind it. I know it's not, we don't have to spend a lot to get to really bump up those metrics a little bit more.
No, and actually when I started, we were about halfway through the second run on Trip to Green. So I kind of got thrown in on that. But it did go a lot better the third time around with getting more information out. There was a better outlook on Trip to Green than there was, even the first time that you guys did a run through on Trip to Green. And it's really not that we need to try and push the content in view more frequently with a paid advertisement. It's that we just need to make sure that we're curtailing our content to a way that is, better received by our followers. And also, it's got to be engaging, so it has to be short because, anything that's over 60 seconds is not gonna fly on social media. Thank you, TikTok. And, of course, we still want to make sure it's informational, so it can't just be cutesy stuff. It has to be relatable to what's happening within the city.
And you feel comfortable with our cadence as well? So, we're being evergreen, but we're not being we're not inundating people with stuff.
Correct.
either.
Yeah. So on average, we post about 2 to 3 times a week, and that's with stories. That's with your standard posts or with reels. For a while, we were doing the public progress report reels. I'm sure many of you have seen those. Unfortunately, it just kind of tanked on viewership. So now I'm trying to look at new ways to get information about what's happening at city council meetings because everyone's concerned. But
So we're not too exciting.
we're not too exciting. Yeah, so that's something that I am working on currently. And, we've got a lot of really great department heads here that help me. I meet with them weekly and yank their teeth and say, give me content. And they're really good about doing it. So.
Great. All right. We'll see no other comments. We're going to go ahead and open up for any public comments. So at this point, so thanks, Emily. And so if anyone would like to comment on this item, please come on up. Good evening, Michael.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a question, didn't see in the staff report what the past costs are, what costs going forward are, so you can analyze bang for the buck, is it worth it, that kind of analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's,
Good evening, Council. Kathy Lishman.
good evening.
I don't really do Facebook except with family and close friends. I don't do TikTok. I don't do Instagram. And I don't need them. And I want to find out information about the city also. So I would like to find out eventually if there's more that the city could do in another direction, because everybody would like to have correct information. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, Jonathan.
Good evening, Michael and council. I'd like to present a miracle here just to thank our sister for what she's doing. I don't do TikTok either. Facebook, yeah, text. I'm 176 young. Well, knock off 100. But I'm glad we're doing that, and the clock is tick-tocking. But I'm glad you know what I'm going to speak about later. But love what the council and what the city is doing, and I'm glad we joined the other cities and counties that stepped up for the homeless epidemic to do something wonderful about it. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other folks, we'll go ahead and close public comment. The contract is approximately $2,600 a month minus the government disc.
2,600 when you discount.
After discount, correct. 2,900 and then 2,600, and then the term, Cleve, I don't remember. Is it just ongoing?
It was a 1-year agreement, so it runs through September of the coming year.
Okay, so this will be
Right,
back,
Emily? Isn't that right?
potentially back in front of us in September-ish for.
Yeah, and we will consider that during your budget item, or your budget workshop, which first one tomorrow night. So you'll have that opportunity to review that and discuss that during that also. So.
Understood. All right. Well, sounds good. So no other, well, again, thank you, Emily, for coming and giving us an update. Appreciate all the efforts and love this. I'm really, I know this was an idea to me that was close to me because I really thought we were sort of behind the curve when it came to getting more information out from a social media perspective and just answering questions when there was, whether it was, something more innocuous or whether when we had things where people were really engaged at. So I'm glad. And it, was falling on Rebecca to do a sort of ad hoc, and, it wasn't fair to Rebecca to do that. And we shouldn't have expected her to do that. She took it up out of the goodness of her heart, but we really, I thought, needed to have that going. And to me, this is much more cost effective than having a PIO on staff that would be doing this, potentially other duties as well, but certainly at a much greater cost. So again, appreciate the update and more on this at budget. So thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. Any item anyone wishes to pull on consent? All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up consent calendar, consent items for public comment. All right, seeing none, go ahead and close public comment. Bring it back to the council for a motion.
I'll move to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 8, public comments for non-agendized items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda and that is within the subject matter's jurisdiction of the city council. The mayor reserves the right to limit speakers to 3 minutes. And as I've mentioned over again, I hate looking up at the screen, but I will every now and then just to make sure we're on time. So with that, I will go ahead and open up oral communications, item 8.1. Anyone wishing to make public comments?
Jonathan Gainsborough. Good evening, council, and good evening, city of Sonoma, and of Placerville. Been a long day, but a good day. I'm really glad that it was determined that it would be Mental Health Awareness Month. The homeless, by and large, nationally in the surveys, self-assess at about 1/3, 35%. The reality is double that, way much higher, and we're all aware of that. Mental health is something that is often pejoratized and criticized, and actually people condemned. They do it sometimes in a reverse sort of way, but mental health is not something that is volitional. It's something you would not wish on yourself, neither do any of the people that are either severely, mildly, or in between affected by it. Praise God. I do thank God, and I thank the council. I thank the supervisors. I was with them for 2 hours this afternoon, spoke with Dr. Nicole. She said that $15 million of the allocated funding was not used this last year. And one of the older long-term county psychiatrists, I forget his name, he brought up that issue. And so I advocated when I got to the mic that we really need to use that up. What if Marshall Hospital only used 50% of the dollars that were allocated? And I spoke of several things. Next week, the supervisors will be getting a presentation from HHSA, from Health and Human Services, specifically also dealing with the Navigation Center. Now, I've dealt with an overdose once or twice, but this weekend there were 2 within 24 hours. I think we all should know about that. And fentanyl was the culprit, but actually mental illness and years of neglect of the homeless puts people in that place of depression. I see the clock running. Last thing I want to touch on, besides encouraging people to come to the supervisors next Tuesday, I was here 3 years ago, spoke here almost every other week as you meet twice a month, as you all know. Martin Boise was brought up, I brought it up and said, if you want a legal situation, pass that illegal anti-camping ordinance. The homeless are telling me that the police are harassing people in the woods, telling them there is a bed when the Navigation Center is full. We have 600 homeless, 60 beds is 10%. You all know the Pareto principle that 2080 will move an issue. We're only halfway there. I just want you to speak, and Joe, I know you're a believer in Jesus Christ. Speak to the officers, because there is going to come video of tents being cut and people being told immediately that there are beds when there are no beds. The beds are full now, and the beds are doing a great job. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Hello again. Open forum, right? Just a question on the mosquito park and ride. I see it's looking great. I mean, even with the weather, our water pressure in the neighborhood's been fluctuating, dropping. I don't know if that's related to that or not, but about roughly the last week, it's significant. You can notice it. And then on the park and ride project, I see they're doing the curb, so the sidewalk's going to be there, and I see some power poles and fire hydrant in what would be the sidewalk. Is the trail and the sidewalk going to be like extra wide right there? They're just wondering if they're going to be wide enough for dual direction trail use. I'm not sure where the trail ends up at the end of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Hello, Council. My name is Mitchell T. I'm coming before you to talk to you about the Navigation Center like Pastor Jonathan just did. The reason why I want to talk to you about this is because I'm personally a born and raised resident. I was born and raised at Marshall. I grew up in this county. I left because I was a ward of the state, and in 2016 I came back. 2017 my life came unraveled. I started using drugs. I became mentally ill. My whole life I've been mentally ill, and drugs made it worse. So with that being stated, the reason why I want to talk to you about this is friends of mine from that center have come forward and have stated of PD and also EDSO harassing them. Me personally, being a resident that has gone off the streets by myself due to my disability being awarded to me, I am sober now, off of 18 months off of fentanyl, 9 months off of heroin, and today 30 days off of methamphetamines. So for me personally to be harassed as a resident of this county by PD officers is not acceptable. I've been a part of cases with EDSO. So for me personally, what I want to say is that I hope if I can come forward to this board with a proposition of an idea to better the Navigation Center, that maybe this board will hear me, because I am somebody that has suffered from mental illness and has been homeless and is changing my life around. And I would like the same for other homeless people. Thank you for your time, Council.
Thank you for your comments. Go ahead and close public comment. I don't know, Rebecca, if you had any comments on the water pressure or on the streetscape. Yeah, I know you probably have a couple.
As far as the water pressure, we'll look into that. We did have to make a connection at the intersection of Clay Street and Mosquito. And then as far as the frontage improvements, the curb and gutter is actually out there right now, kind of illustrates where the future right turn lane in the southbound direction on Mosquito is located. We did realign the El Dorado Trail in that area, and the wide space that you currently see right there now is the realignment of the trail, which avoids the power pole and the fire hydrant. You may recall the power pole had been relocated and sat in the middle of the trail for a reason, because we waited for the power pole to be relocated into its final location, so we're only doing it once. And then what you see now is essentially the result of the realignment of the trail, and it's now properly located outside that trail space.
Okay.
We do have project exhibits. It was actually kind of ironic because I'm working on a construction post for the lovely Emily over here. And we do have project exhibits available. It was on the October 11th, 2022 City Council agenda as attachment B to the staff report.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it. Okay. No. I will. I think, and I'll probably bring this up in item. What is that? 14. Okay. But I think it will be good. We should invite, if the county is, will honor the request, but have them come do an update for us from Navigation Center. I know if they're going to be doing one for the Board of Supervisors, maybe we can maybe time it around the same time, and we can answer some questions. Have public if they can't make it to the county meeting, we can answer some questions for the public of city of residents here as well. So, but I'll bring that back up at that point as well. Okay. We do not have any items pulled from consent, no ordinance or public hearings. So we're going to go to item 12, which are discussion and action items. Oh, yes, that's true. Thank you, Jackie. Did we have any, for item 8.2, did we have any written communications?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. No, I may have missed it, so I appreciate that. So item 12.1, which is consideration of El Dorado disposal rates for the collection of solid waste and recycling within the city of Placerville franchise area. Mr. Rivas has this item for us. And I don't know if we wanted to. We'll start with Pierre? Okay, all right. Go for it, Pierre.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Staff is asking the council to receive a presentation from El Dorado Disposal on the proposed annual rate increase request for the collection of solid waste recycling, which also includes organic waste collection program within the city. Each year, El Dorado Disposal makes this request for the city to review a rate adjustment based primarily on two factors: the Consumer Price Index, CPI, for California, and the Producer Price Index, PPI, for number 2 diesel fuel. The proposed CPI increase is 7.349%. This increase is derived from the annual average for 2021, and the annual average for 2022 is shown in attachment 3 of your staff report. The fuel adjustment is 1.536%, as shown in attachment 4, which shows the change from the ending fuel component to the fuel surcharge that's applied in 2022. The total requested adjustment is 8.884%. As of late, staff has come to the attention of staff that there is an issue regarding the franchise agreement, and basically following a close review of the franchise agreement, addressing rate increase requests, some of the requirements have not been met. More specifically, Section 16C, which addresses rate adjustments to be made for inflation or deflation, allows for the automatic adjustment for the CPI. The following section of the agreement, Section 16D, allows for adjustments for extraordinary circumstances, which allows for the consideration of adjustments for regulatory cost increases, taxes, other fees, or other circumstances, and which require the review of a rate increase. The Producer Price Index, or PPI, for diesel fuel is included in this category as an increase due to extraordinary circumstances. So going back to subsection C, which states, I'm going to read it out of the franchise agreement, such automatic adjustment shall only occur if, and no earlier than January 1st, and no later than April 1st, prior to the commencement of each new operating year. The grantee has provided written notice to the city and its customers, which notice shall specify the amount of the adjustment determined in accordance with Section 19C, if any. And since the customers unfortunately were not provided the requested amount of the rate adjustment in accordance with this section, and that April 1st deadline was not met and has already passed, action on the CPI adjustment can only be considered under Section 16D as an adjustment for extraordinary circumstances. Thus, it is not automatic. So with that, staff is recommending that the council receive the presentation by El Dorado Disposal staff, who will review the company's performance standards, the annual collection rates per the CPI and fuel increases, respond to any specific questions by council members, and then 2, consider the requested rate increases. And that concludes staff's report. Happy to answer any questions you have before we move on to the presentation.
All right, thank you, Pierre. Any questions for Mr. Rivas at this point? I had one, Pierre. When do you know when we started separating out, or has it always been since the inception of this contract, doing the PPI for the diesel fuel and then the CPI for the rest of the potential rate increase?
My recollection that separation started in 2010. And I think at that time there was a huge spike in fuel, which dramatically increased the cost of El Dorado disposal, and that's when we began looking at the PPI separate from the CPI.
Gotcha. And that falls under the extraordinary regulation or component. But we've done the PPI though every year since 2010?
It's my understanding there was one particular year where the PPI actually went down, and there was a reduction. And if it's helpful too, I have it's just a graphic that I can provide for the council it's basically from the FRED, the Federal Reserve, and the source is the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's just a graphic, and I think it's just helpful to see the fluctuation of diesel fuel.
I just want to add, while he's coming up, it's actually been about 4 or 5 times that the PPI has gone down rather than just once. And at that point when that happened, we actually reduced the CPI by the amount of the reduction in the PPI. So.
Understood. I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's called extraordinary. Extraordinary to me means unforeseen incident, a major pandemic. But we've done this every single year since 2010. That's quite ordinary. And so it really isn't being used in the way, at least the language, unless it's just poor language built into the actual contract. But extraordinary is something different than every year. That ceases to be extraordinary. So I like to have a conversation around that, or maybe some options, because to me it just doesn't seem to quite fit what we're trying to do. I get it in extraordinary circumstances, like in 2010 when this was first sort of moved out, and then because fuel is, and I'll ask our friends at El Dorado Disposal to maybe walk me through this more, because I had to try to wrap my head around it as well. So I know fuel isn't the major driver in CPI, but it is a driver within CPI. So unless you're stripping it out completely, you're still having fuel in the CPI indexing as well as in the PPI one. So it's like a double tax, if you will, because it's within both. So even if it has gone down sometimes, you're still getting a percentage of it here as well under the CPI and then under the PPI. And since it's not really extraordinary anymore, it's just become sort of, we've just passed it. And I've been as guilty as this as anybody else, because I've been on the council for several years. So, but as I dug a little bit deeper into it, I noticed some of these things. And so I wanted to have that conversation and also bring it to the forefront as well, so that, we could all sort of think about that and, how we do this. And I will say that, this is a contract that's in place till 2033. But even within that context, I still want to be able, because that part, the fuel part, is actually up to us. We can say yay or nay each year to that. And it's up to our, to El Dorado Disposal to tell us why it's extraordinary circumstances. But with that, I didn't know, Mona, if you had anything you wanted to add in at this point, or if we should just move forward with the presentation, or if we had other questions from staff.
I think
or from my colleagues.
I think you can open it up to the presentation, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Okay, great. So I guess that was my statement, is really more, I guess, if if you all wanted to address any of that, and then just for my colleagues to think about as well as we have this conversation. So with that, if you all want to come on down to give your presentation, thank you again for all being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. As usual, it's always great to teamwork with Pierre and Cleve. We meet monthly. We go over lots of things together, and it really makes things easier when we work together. My name's Ross Rieksecker. I'm the hauling site manager for El Dorado Disposal, so that's the truck side. Tonight I'm joined by Jeff England, who you've probably seen here before. He overlooks our entire transfer station operations and all the big changes going on over there. Got a couple other fellows with me in the back, our controller and one of our operations and our operations manager. So we'll jump into this. Part of giving a presentation every year is partly to just provide an update, give you a little insight to some things we've been through, some things we're working towards, just keep you in the loop of everything waste related. So in reflection, 2022 was a tough year for business. I think everybody probably just knows that based on experiences out in public. Right, you go to a restaurant and there's a sign that says they're closed because there's nobody working. We faced similar problems. Hiring was a huge challenge in 2022. There was a point in the year where we had 7 open routes just because we didn't have enough drivers to cover those routes. So you got to think of spreading 7 routes among the people that did show up to work. It created quite the challenge for us, and you can imagine all the survival tactics that come into play that we have to deal with rather than trying to make sure we're giving a great service out there. We're simply reverting to, can we actually complete the job for the day, every day? As we move through 2022, kind of that post-pandemic supply chain staffing issue kind of slowed, and we've actually really came out of the weeds with all of that. Another challenge we faced was with new trucks. Part of CARB, for anybody who's familiar, we replaced over 23 trucks as a result of the Air Board restrictions and age of trucks. 7 of those trucks that were due in 2022 we still have not received, which we're waiting on till this day. Hopefully soon we'll get them all. And that's not even including trucks we're asking for this, that we asked for last year to get this year. So those are ongoing challenges we're dealing with in the truck manufacturing world. Trucks these days, going rate's about $420,000. I like to tell our drivers that you're driving a house around, so respect it, be nice to it. If we move on to sustainability, I think that was a very hot topic last year with organics. Part of just being able to keep up with all the new regulations was for us adding kind of a leader to our sustainability program, which we did in the nature of a sustainability project manager, as we call him. So Nathan Perot, whoever has had contact with him, you most likely will see him out there. He's been a huge help with helping us maintain our organics, requirements and really building and pushing out new programs to remain successful with all of that. So the team is now 3 people strong. You see the 2 coordinators there in the picture. These 2 lovely ladies are often in the community at our booth, educating our customers and trying to capitalize on every opportunity we can to pass that information to people out there. SB 1383 was huge. We know it was a challenging and kind of a painful thing to go through, which we're still very much going through it. But on the residential side, we've become fully compliant with Cow Recycle. And now we're building upon the commercial implications of SB 1383, which are very much involved today. A big emphasis, regardless of residential or commercial, is just education and outreach. It's very important to us to take every opportunity we can to get out there and help people understand, how's the right way to do things and be successful and participate. Some of the community events we were able to be a part of this year are up here. If you look to the picture on the right, it's one of our supervisors who had the garbage truck in the park and was able to read a story to some kids, which is pretty cool. Again, every one of these opportunities for the most part is a way to interact with our residents and get them, useful information that's directly relatable to their waste. You can see our community cleanup stats right there. Roughly in the spring cleanup, we pulled over just under 21 tons of waste out. And then in the fall, a little bit less, but just under 12 tons there. As we move forward, this is probably obviously really hard to see for most people, so I'll just kind of walk you through it. Obviously, we have performance standards we adhere to every year. Each one of those columns represents a month and kind of how we tracked throughout the year. So I'll just kind of walk you through it. The residential portion involves 3 billing inserts per year, which we did 5. New resident packets need to go out to everybody who moves into a new residence. So that's people moving into a new house, people changing houses. We provide a resident packet that gives all detailed information of, service schedule, the do's, the don'ts, what goes in what container, where to dispose of certain things, etc. We provide website updates, which we did 4 recommendations, mostly around organics. And then we do special removal out on the street. Our drivers will remove batteries, household batteries, and jugs of oil, which is kind of you call, you schedule it, you leave it on the can, and we pick it up. As we move into the commercial outreach, we're required to meet with 4 commercial businesses per quarter. I'll tell you, in July, we met with 39 alone, and that's strictly around organics changes and recycling and really trying to hit the pavement running to get people the information they need to be successful. We do 3 printed outreach per year, usually involves, how to keep your enclosure clean, what goes in the dumpsters, all sorts of stuff like that. And then we do 3 billing inserts per year, which it looks like we did about 7. As we move into the call answer rate, we're required to answer phone calls within 180 seconds, 3 minutes. We were able to do that pretty much every month, except for a couple. How that's ranked, however, is it's on an average. So even with those high months, we're still below the average requirement. And then if we get service complaints, we handle them. If we get litter complaints, we handle them. The importance for us is just handling those things rapidly with a solution that works. And then the reporting, we report these performance standards to the city monthly, and with a number of other reports around recycling, cow recycle stuff, that sort of thing. As we move on here, this is another hard to see picture, but this is the CPI calculation, which Mr. Voss referred to. So the 2 highlighted yellow things there, you can see an annual average for 2021, and 2022. So it's basically going from roughly 297 to 319, a little over a 21-point increase, which represents the 7.349% number that was referenced earlier. CPI is a true measure of year-over-year change, right? We went from one place to another, and it highlights that change. Throughout the year of these challenges we faced, with a number of things, we absorbed all these costs throughout the remainder of the year in 2022. CPI is a way for us to basically make up a little bit of ground and become whole from those costs. I know the question was, how much does fuel figure into CPI? We calculated it, and it's roughly 2% of CPI. So it's 2% of that 7.39%, which is, I think, 20-ish basis points. If we move on to the fuel component, this basically is a calculation of how fuel has increased over the years, and a comparison to last year, and that's how we arrive at the 1.53%. If anyone's wondering how that's calculated, we might have to dive into that a little deeper, because it's kind of a complicated equation, but it's an equation that makes it fair to the point where it calculates the true change. Because if we were just doing a simple calculation like CPI, it would be huge from last year to this year, being with some of the numbers you'll see from January to December and so forth. I do want to add, diesel is our 3rd largest cost to operate our business. In 2022, with the fuel boom that happened, that again we all experienced, we spent about $360,000 over our budget. So that money is unplanned that we spent and that we had to absorb and figure it out in a sense. So all in, if you basically combine the CPI of the 7.39 and the fuel of 1.536, we arrive at that 8.884 request number. As you see in the table here, this is a monthly impact example to some residential rates. Most common rate in Placerville is a 35 gallon. You can see that it goes from just under $2 for a senior rate to about $2.57 for a normal 35 rate, and at the highest service level, 96 gallon, it's about a $4.45 increase, and these are monthly numbers. And then the yellow column there, added all together, that's what a ratepayer would see here in Placerville. So a couple things I just wanted to add. There was a number of questions. I don't know if I can remember them all, but as far as the way we request rate increases, fuel increase, it's been the same way for 15 years. When this agreement was in place with previous leadership from myself and the city, the agreement was made to kind of combine the fuel and the CPI to avoid having multiple rate increases on the ratepayer. I kind of compared some increases over the last 10 years. And on average, the fuel component over the last 10 years was a 0.21% increase. So out of 5 of the last 10 years, the fuel component actually was a negative and helped lower that CPI rate increase. So the fuel component has benefited the ratepayer equally as much as it's costed them. And if you think about 21 basis points, it's almost de minimis. If you think about, I know Pierre mentioned one year where the fuel actually was such a huge decrease, it lowered CPI. So it deducted from the rate, and that was in 2015. There was actually a 0.46% decrease in rates just because the fuel component was a negative 2.26%. So I would say that, it seems high this year, and I think it's because we all experienced that. But there is a benefit, too, in years where there is a decline. CPI average over the last 10 years, including 2023, which includes that 7.349 number, is a 2.9%. So again, even CPI has a way of kind of balancing itself out and reflecting the true nature of cost increases in the economy and what we're affected by. Over the last 10 years, the total increase average, if you combine fuel and CPI, was 3.136%. Again, pretty much kind of averaging out over those years. So last couple things, some of the things we face, truck maintenance, getting the parts, the materials, the things we need to run these trucks in our business has, drastically increased. We've had to increase driver wages by 18% over the last, we've had to increase driver wages 20% over the last 18 months, just to get people in the seats, remain competitive, and be able to provide the service we do. We've had to kind of battle increased healthcare costs to provide benefits to our employees. And through all these challenges, it's been very important to us to be good community partners. We haven't cut or slowed any of our philanthropic activities. That means all the nonprofits we donate to, getting out there and helping the community, homeless cleanups, you name it. It's not something we're willing to cut. It's not something we're willing to slow down as a result, because we know how important it is for our community and for our residents. So I guess I just want to end with saying, the CPIs like this help us remain whole with all those challenges we face. And with that, that's pretty much the presentation, unless we're going to start with questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I think what I'll do is, if colleagues don't mind, I'll open it up for public comments, and then we'll do questions after. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this item for public comments. Thank you.
Good evening again. Thank you for the little snippet of contract, and right there in the middle of it, it says basically there's no guarantee that the ratepayers have to make the company whole or the granted franchise monopoly. They don't get to cover all their costs on our back. That's the risk they take. It's right there in the contract. I'm kind of bummed. really reduced my trash. I produce about 5 gallons a week. So I'm paying the smallest can, 35 gallons. It's just a waste. I wish there was a way to have a smaller can, but it's probably related to the automatic truck pickup. I disagree with automatically granting discount to seniors. That's assuming they're all poor. We know that's not true. If you want to grant a discount, give it on based on income. There's the existing CARE and the existing FARA plan, but it's actually ageism against younger ratepayers to automatically grant. I know plenty of wealthy seniors, and to give them an automatic discount is wrong. Thank you for the mention of the fuel already being a factor of the CPI. And I would even go further and consider a clawback of the double dipping that's been going on for years. If they've been granted CPI increase and a fuel increase, that's double dipping. So it would take pretty good mathematics to figure that out. And please consider your contract implications of what CARB did last week. They basically banned all petrol big rigs, everything, backhoes, school buses, transit buses, garbage trucks, tow trucks, everything is going to have to be, I guess, battery powered. So what is that going to do if you have a clause in your contract that says they can, extraordinary costs, all of a sudden they're going to have to replace each truck with unobtainable $2 million battery trucks? What are we looking at? This is insane, but you got about 12 years to figure that out. Just a side note, the fastest way to destroy the planet is to support battery pack vehicles. The amount of mining it takes for these rare minerals just destroys the earth. Thank you for answering. The contract, I think, goes to 2033. Does it go, the question is then, does it go to open bid? And are there any other providers that would even be able to bid? So that's my questions. Thank you.
Good evening, Kathy Lishman. I have to say that you decided to open up to the public before the council asked questions or discussed it. I think from the public's point of view, we like it if the council has discussed or asked questions. It helps us when we want to make comments. It kind of reminds me of the thing about the farmer's market. After it closed, the council came up with a really great idea, but the public had to comment on it at a future meeting. So I like to hear what the council says before we comment. I was wondering how the increase fits in with the recent increase due to composting. It doesn't seem like that was a year ago. I don't know when the date was that our rates were increased because of the composting. I was at the home show and I looked for the El Dorado disposal table, and I was really pleased to see the two ladies that were working there. They were offering composting classes in the fall for people who might be interested. They had a bucket, and they would teach people how to use this bucket and drill holes. I kind of read it, but I already compost, so I wouldn't be taking it. But I think that's something really important to get the word out on how people can compost at their own houses. And their theory that they have, and it should get out to the public too, is using worms and different things. The fuel cost is partly because of having to drive all of our yard waste to Sonoma County. That was what happened when we took on composting, that all the yard waste cannot be trucked to Rancho Cordova or Sacramento anymore. So I wish there was a better way. Maybe John's looking at me like I'm crazy. I wish there was a better way to do the composting that has to leave the county instead of taking all the yard waste with it, because it would be cheaper to do the yard waste in Sacramento. And I'm interested in knowing how the reduction in garbage is going due to the composting and how that program is actually working, and do you get many complaints from people? Are people happy with it? Are they doing what is suggested? And then the billing inserts, I wanted to ask about that because I have paperless billing and I have auto pay. So I wondered if it's possible to get the billing inserts, that there could be a link in the email where we could get the billing inserts, because I know I've overlooked a lot of them. And one final thing, I don't know if the city gets complaints about the garbage and how those are resolved or what kind of complaints they get. One thing, and this is kind of silly, but a long time ago, every time our garbage and recycling and yard waste was picked up, the truck was able to close the lid somehow. And now it doesn't get closed, and on rainy days it becomes a problem with all the water that goes inside. So I didn't know if it's possible. Maybe it was just a trick that the previous garbage, the person who picked up the garbage had, that he was able to do, but it'd be great if it could be taught to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Very quickly, Kathy, I was not looking at you like you were crazy. I was trying to remember the same thing you were remembering, and that dead look is kind of me thinking.
Sue Rodman, Placerville resident and member of the Placerville Fire Safe Council. And I'd like to say we really appreciated the fact that El Dorado Disposal came to our little preparing for wildflower event and put their truck and a tent and two people, probably the same two people that they had at other events, explaining to people how they can be helpful. And they did a great job. So I wanted to say thank you.
Good evening, Ryan Carter. Actually, Kathy reminded me of something that I would actually like you guys to address, and that's the lids. Did something change over the last year? Because you guys have had to replace my recycle bin lid 3 times, because every time, at least once a month, when it gets set down, it falls and breaks the lid. So thank you, Kathy, for bringing that up, because that has been a big issue. 3 times on my recycle bin, twice on my trash can, and once on my yard waste. So that's 6 lids that you guys have had to replace in the last 12 months just at my house. So yeah, just out of curiosity if something changed with the trucking and how that came about. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further comments, I'm going to close public comments, bring it back to the council. I know there was a couple of questions in there, but colleagues, any questions you want to ask?
Well, first I just want to say that you've been really good partners with the community, and I want to acknowledge that. You know, I want to find a way for us to be fair and move forward, and you know, the 9% is, almost 9% is a lot to swallow, and I think it would help people to understand detailed how that money is being spent. I know I've had people ask me, you know, are they getting 10% raises? You know, how that money is being spent might help also.
Yeah, just a comment for me. I mean, the one thing I want colleagues to think about is, so the 8.8% becomes the new base for the year after. We know that inflation today is an outlier. The Fed is doing everything in their power to try to tap that down, and unless they screw it up, which is possible, you know, we should have lower, you know, we shouldn't enter into a new higher inflationary period. And so if it's an outlier year, we are now creating a base based off of that outlier year with that, you know, percentage. And I guess at this point, because I think there's probably a little bit of confusion too about what we're doing here tonight. We actually are not going to be voting on the CPI portion of it because of some of the discrepancies. But Mona, I wanted you to just kind of comment on that, to just go over what our options are, because that actually is not going to be one of the things tonight, but it may be something in the future. So that's why I wanted to just clarify.
Yes, excuse me. So there are, the agreement contemplates 3 types of increases to the grantee, which is EDD. The first is the increase to actual rates. That's your, you know, the garbage rates, recycling rates, and so forth. That's not for discussion at all today. The other rate increase is for inflationary adjustment, CPI. That is an item before you. And then the third is extraordinary circumstances, which can include fuel, but there's other things, anything that affects revenues or costs. Increases based on new laws, new regulations that have impacted them. So my review of the contract is that unfortunately the notice requirements for the CPI increase were not complied with. Therefore, I do not recommend that the council consider the CPI increase because that was not met. However, the increase under subsection D, adjustments for extraordinary circumstances, does give you the discretion, but not the requirement, to consider any increase that you think is reasonable given the justifications that EDD has provided to you. For example, 20% increase to wages for drivers, the healthcare costs, the fuel, all of that. And you are, again, you have the discretion to be able to, under that set of rules, be able to decide how much you would like to provide them with that. And that would be under both of the increases, the fuel increase, and it would be the percentage for CPI, but it wouldn't actually be categorized as CPI. We would categorize it under kind of an extraordinary circumstance pursuant to, again, the increase in revenue that they've had to expend for workers and healthcare and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Does that make sense to everybody?
Kind of. So if we considered it not a CPI increase, does that mean it would change our base rate for next year still?
Yes, would be my understanding. Would that be correct, that our base rate would still be affected by, if we were to say, just throwing out a number, 2%, that we would said that would be what we considered, that would be part of the base for 2024?
That's correct. That would become your rate going forward, and then, whatever assuming they meet the requirement for CPI next year, which I think we will, that would go on top of that next year. Yeah.
Everyone asked a lot of questions. Do we want to give them an
Yeah,
opportunity to? Okay.
Yes, if you all wanted to come back. I know there was a lot of questions thrown out there. I wrote a couple of things down, but if you wanted to address any of the questions from the public.
Parts, operational things. Let me just speak I'm going to make a very brief comment
Sure.
as it relates to the CPI and the language situation. We kind of scrambled today to remember our past. And kind of remember, where this all started and how we're here having this conversation. Our belief is that back when that either in 2008 or 2010, when the initial fuel conversation occurred, that both the city and El Dorado Disposal entered into agreement to simplify that process and not have a separate line item issue specific to the fuel, to combine those in order to simplify that process. We have done the exact same process every year since then. Every year we submit the letter on time. Every year it's approved by the city manager and city council or whomever is part of that review process. Part of the reason for wanting that also is that this enables us, one, it enables a conversation and this presentation so that there can be a conversation, and a part of it was not wanting to share a number that could shift with the public then later and having to do multiple notifications. That's our understanding and recollection of what occurred. I guess I'll say if Mr. Driscoll was here tonight, that might be helpful. And I was working for El Dorado Disposal at the time. I wasn't involved in part of that. Like I said, we've really tried to work to recollect, why that's there, because language is what it is. But we do believe we have an established past practice for many years that we've presented it in this way. It's been acceptable in this manner, and that's really how we're looking at this situation right now. And then Ross and I are happy to answer any of the questions about carts or anything else that we can do our best on.
Thank you. Yeah, if you want to, I know there was a couple of public comments. I know it's not necessarily germane, but let's, yeah.
I wrote down what I could real quick. As far as the closed lids, they should be closed for the most part. So it's concerning to hear that experience twice in here, which is something we can definitely follow up on. I will tell you our newer style trucks are different than the older ones, and they have more of a fling motion. So I think when it's coming down, it has the perfect, force to kind of whip that lid open. That's probably part of it. I know there was a question on when organics rates were effective. That was in July of last year is when all that went effective. Same time as our CPI increase. And for this year, if there was a CPI approved, it would be effective in July. So it would be exactly 1 year between those. I know there was a statement about double dipping with CPI when it comes to the fuel, but I do want to remind that the fuel in the CPI also goes down with the economy, so it kind of has the same effect, as the other stuff I mentioned earlier. As far as being a monopoly, we earn a franchise agreement. It's not a right. It's not given. We're held to performance standards, and we work really hard to meet those standards. And at the end of the day, we pay franchise fees, which helps the community and all the residents who live in the city of Placerville. So, thank you.
Come back for 1 second. Thank you.
We have another question for you.
So in your CPI, are your employees across the board getting a cost of living increase? And if so, what is that percentage?
Yeah, we do CPI increases every year for drivers. I believe last.
Just real quick, we haven't notified our employees yet what they're getting this year. That's occurring right now, but I'd just like to say that if I may.
Historically. All right, historically.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we did last year, because again, we're not even to that point this year. We're working through that currently. I believe our average for drivers last year was 5%.
Okay, that's more than anybody in the city here gets. So, just wanted to kind of.
They have a hard job, and we try to take good care of them, and we try to keep people in the seats also. It's a part of it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for our EDD folks? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to close the comments, bring this back for discussion. Let's see where we want to go here. I agree with everybody. We want to be fair. EDD are great partners in the community and for the city. At the same time, I want to make sure we're getting the best deal for our residents. In ensuring that we're not creating what I at least in my mind, an artificial base on an outlier year when it comes to inflation. And then as we dug into the contract a little more, again, I go back to something can't be yearly and be extraordinary. So if that's a clarification in the contract that needs to happen, or something we need to go back and negotiate, because I just don't, whether or not we grant something tonight, that would be 13 straight years of a fuel increase. That's not extraordinary. That's just a CPI. That is just we're doing it every year. And like I said, shame on myself for not catching this before, but that can't be. There's something wrong with that formula if it's every single year. And so I want you all to think about that as we look at this option, because I think that's something we need to look at for the future, because there needs to be a better mechanism if that's the case. I'd rather see one, and I know it was separated out before for a good reason, but at the same time now I'm looking at it as maybe it should have been different language, because I'd rather just see one rate then and see what I'm all in at, as opposed to, even though I know it's gone up and down, it still doesn't quite ring true to what that language says.
I was around in 2015 when the rate went down and everybody was very happy. And of course, it's always easy to be happy when you're reducing someone's rates. I was also around when we had to set the new rates for sewers, because we had not been keeping up with our costs. And we had sort of been pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off, and for a much longer period of time, actually, than when we finally had to make the decision. And it's a real jolt to the system when you have to true it all up. And when I look at these rates, I think to myself, the challenge is you don't know what the trend is. I look at, for example, the Fred thing here, the PPI thing, and there's been these big spikes, and it kind of runs around, and then it drops down. So what you don't know is at the edge of the graph which trend we're going at. I just looked at futures for diesel, and they tend to be trending down. That's probably going to be because there's a slowdown in the economy. These things do run with the economy. I agree with the mayor. I think that we should try to find a way to put these things back together, because if you kind of look at the price of this diesel price, you could run a pen across. I'm just running my pen across it right now, and it actually almost, you could do an average in here, and it almost is straight. And if you looked at inflation from that period just after the Great Recession until just in the last couple of years, inflation was pretty modest in the country. It was running somewhere between 2 or 3%. And so it made for a very nice reality. The prices didn't go up much. Sometimes they went down. The price of diesel was bouncing all over the place. And now we're having this, these are extraordinary numbers. I agree with you. A thing that happens every year should not be considered extraordinary. It should either be part of the puzzle or it should be put back into the puzzle and made one number. I'm a little concerned about setting base rates based on some economic activities which may be an outlier. I also, though, am sensitive to the idea, because having lived through it on the sewer side, is that if you don't keep up with your costs, you will have a come to Jesus moment at some point, and then the decisions get real hard. So that maybe like Solomon, we might want to try maybe splitting this baby in half. I don't mean half of the numbers we've been talking about, it's metaphorical. But coming up with something like that. Also, I do agree with Mr. Drobich. My wife and I generate very little trash. We never fill, in fact, our garbage can is typically a bag of garbage. There's just the two of us in our house, so there's a reason for that. In fact, given the time of year, we almost always fill our green waste, because there's always leaves to be raked and stuff like that. Even the recycling, and we try to recycle the stuff we're supposed to recycle, and even that doesn't get filled up. I spend, we pay what everybody else pays. And I'm sure I'm subsidizing someone else who generates more trash, which is part of the issue. I'm not complaining. But it is an interesting thing. And on the lids, it's random. In my experience, it's random. I'll come home and they're all full, especially on the rainy days. You're going, yeah. And then they're all open on the rainy days and you're going, I got a bucket full of rain. Anyway, that's just a random thought. I don't know what to do here. I'm feeling somewhat lost.
Well, one thing that I'll throw out for a discussion point is, and this is something that, looking back, doesn't matter, but there will be times in history, especially with a long-term contract, where you may have outlier years. Something that we do as a city, even within our own negotiations, is we have a cap on what CPI is going to be, so that if there is a year that has 9% growth, our cap, like when we've had it for our employees, it's 4%, right. And that is to protect the city taxpayers from not a huge spike, if we have that within our contracts. And that's probably something that should have been in this contract, and looking back, but like I said, that is what it is. But in this particular case, we potentially could have that conversation, since it's going to be up to us potentially to decide what a rate might look like. So one thought I had was, 4% would sort of be within the middle. All in, I would say, for me, would be like a 4% increase. That would be inclusive of the fuel. So all, like I said, all in as amount, because if that's what's in our maximum within our employee, I feel that would be commensurate with what we're looking at here today. So as a discussion point, I would put that out there for everyone to think about.
I'll go ahead on that one. It's actually funny. I threw out a very similar number to Cleve of 4% having a conversation with him. Again, kind of thinking, they spoke to the average all-in being 3.16 tonight. That was what we were told. So I think that's kind of commiserate with a normal year, and, you know, looking at fuel, looks like it's going down. You know, you look at the March to March comparison, and it's drastically different than a January to January comparison. So, I mean, last year was just a very anomalous year. So I'll say that right now.
Yeah, I wish we could understand the breakdown of what's happening in those percentage, because, you know, he said your drivers' wages have gone up 20% in the last 18 months, and you're potentially asking another 5%, so their wages are going up 25% in less than 2 years. Is wow. And, you know, it's just a lot to swallow for our ratepayers. It's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, certainly we have a lot of options in front of us. And I know one thing, Mona, is there, what is it a Prop 215 compliance issue here, or?
The way that the agreement is structured is that the city, while we're having this discussion, is not actually levying the rate itself. El Dorado Disposal is levying the rate, is collecting the rate, and so the city's taking the position that since it is not imposing this rate, that we are not subject to it at this time.
Gotcha. So that wouldn't mean that we could, whatever number we may come up with tonight would be within the confines of our ability to do then.
I do not recommend going above what they have obviously, and you wouldn't be doing that, right? But what the numbers that they have provided have been substantiated with some evidence in the records to support that. And therefore, there is some support, and there's a nexus for why you can consider that. And the contract also requires that, you know, in using your discretion, that you your discretion is not, you know, unreasonably withheld. And so that should be kind of the parameter for your decision making tonight.
Understood. Thank you. Okay. Any other thoughts? I mean, well, let me ask this for everybody. I mean, I've went back and forth on this. I was trying to find, because I do think, and I totally agree with you, John, there are, and I've harped on this before when we've talked about like sewer rates and other things, is, you know, when I was undersecretary, you had like boards and commissions, barbering and cosmetology or geology, and, you know, they would go like 8 years, 9 years without an increase to their rates, and all of a sudden someone gets like a 200% increase in their bill. Because the board really hadn't done their job to keep up with the costs associated with it. So I'm very cognizant of that factor as well, that things just don't go down. I mean, things do go down a little bit, but in the long run, everything goes up. The trends are there, right? So, you know, we know those costs are going to be there. We know those costs are going to be there for EDD, as, you know, going forward, especially with additional state mandates, you know, going forward. Although we did in our last, I mean, we have to remember as well, is that we did do a rate increase for 1383, and we also did a rate increase for the MRF facility as well in the past. So we've been good partners, I think, as well, trying to ensure that we've been equitable with our partners as well as them being back to us. So just in the brief history, you know, we've had some pretty big increases over the last few years.
And yes, and thank you for that. And but all I'm suggesting with the comment I made about the sewer rates, and we didn't, and when we finally got down to raising and doing the whole sewer rate thing, Cleve, there was a lot of pretzel logic involved. I mean, we definitely smoothed things out, and there was a lot of moving parts in that, because otherwise it was going to be. I think when Dave, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection was when we finally settled on the rates, they weren't exactly the rates, but we did sort of look to the future and say, this is where we need to be, and we'll get there stepwise this way. And I guess the only reason I say that in this context is, well, we can't, and I don't think we would do, I wouldn't do it, is say we settle on a number, I'm going to say 4, just because I've heard it twice now, or any number. And it's not the one that's being requested, we have to always be kind of looking in the rearview mirror, taking what we might learn a year from now, and then look at the decision we made in order to sort of make sure that we're sort of keeping an eye on the real, you know, the real cost, the real things that are going on here. I also agree with Councilmember No. we have long come to Jesus discussions with our employees every year around budget, and it's hard when you hear like, well, you know, there's folks out there paying their people a lot, and we have to come back and say, yeah, but our people only going to get 3.5% because we don't have this. We can't just go and tell we're going to raise our revenues. We don't have that. We're subject to the economy and every place else, and I want to be cognizant of that as well.
Well, and I think also, I mean, if we're wrong, right? If this
Yeah.
year isn't anomalous and it goes the other way and next year looks the same, I mean, there will be an opportunity then to have a large increase on the number.
Do we have last year's rate increase? What it was?
Last year's
what was last year's rate increase?
Last year was 3.27 was the CPI, but then we also had the organics on top of that, which was the big one. Is that right, Jeff and Ross? Is that right?
Okay. So
Yeah, I want to say it was like 18%.
The number I recall was 3.27, but then with, like I say, with the organics, it really jumped it up over 10%, 15 or something like that. So,
okay.
But again, that was one of those extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah,
So-
that was one. I mean, that was essentially an unfunded state mandate that came down on all haulers. And then really on cities too, because if we didn't comply, then there's penalties and other stuff as well. So, but definitely
Yeah, because kind of what I know I've been silent, but sitting here mulling over is kind of some of the things that you guys are talking about with the, anomalous year and split the difference and all that. But what I'm hearing about what their extraordinary circumstances are is nothing any different than every other business in this town is dealing with right now when it comes to hiring employees or giving raises to people to come in or, cost of fuel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, we just dealt with another situation where, well, we've done it in the past, but at the same time, it wasn't to the contract. So now, if I'm seeing this correctly or reading this correctly, the contract for bringing this in and notifying the public that this rate is going to be increased was between January and April, correct?
For the CPI increase, correct?
Okay, so I'm kind of seeing a pattern, in the last couple of things that we've dealt with here when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I'm personally, obliged to stick to the CPI increase when it comes to the date of the contract. I mean, if that's what it needed to be, then it needed to be done during the contract. Because I'm not seeing them facing anything different than everybody else in this county is facing when it comes to having to deal with their employees and cost of doing business.
Can I ask a question related to that? So if that's kind of your thought, what is your thought on the PPI component, which is the fuel component, which isn't part of the CPI?
Yeah, the fuel cost. It's rolled into the CPI already. And I understand that some part of the PPI and the CPI and how they did it back and forth, back when 2010 or whatever, when it helped them, higher here, lower here, decreased. I think they were just basically fudging numbers at that point to make things look better. So, yeah, the PPI itself, the fuel cost is rolled in already.
I just want to mention quickly to you, they did send me information. So, for example, they're requesting 7.349 in CPI. If you remove the fuel component from that, which I asked them to do, and they did do, it only goes down to 7.224. So it's not much. So just for your information, that diesel component apparently is much larger than what this is in the CPI. Just for your information.
So prior to 2010, because this contract's been effectuated since 1994. Probably, no one may know the answer to this, but what did we do before? Were they always like 6-7% increases in the cost because we had these things combined?
I have to be honest, I didn't look back before about 2008. So
I was wondering, because obviously there had to be both of those, both diesel fuel and CPI had to be calculated, I would assume, prior to 2010. It didn't be, unless EDD just all of a sudden realized we're having a lot more cost at that point.
Again, I think it was just CPI prior to that, and because there was a spike in diesel in that 8-9 year that brought that about, is my understanding.
Gotcha. I mean, so when it decreases, it's sort of de minimis on the CPI, if that's the case, if it's only 20 basis points. Oh, yes, come on up.
If I may, also what occurred in 2008 at that time was the city making the choice to go from non-mandatory to mandatory services, which caused a shift in related costs and had an impact on how the rate setting process was formulated.
Again, I mean, Dave, I agree. I mean, I think there isn't a lot of difference in anyone else that's, you know.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I will say this, though, that you can bet that there will not be this issue next year, that EDD is going to make sure that this is all done exactly according to the contract. And, you know, we may see a rather large CPI increase without us being able to do anything about it. So, you know, that I think is that's the other side of zero. You know, if you don't decide not to do anything tonight, you're probably looking at a really large CPI increase in a year from today. Well, it would be with the extraordinary.
The annual extraordinary.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can say no to that.
Yeah, I mean, the CPI, if all the contract terms are made, is automatic, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, next year, if we don't do anything this year, next year we're probably looking at a large number.
Realize though that's only on an annual basis, so they can't go back and pick up what was this year according to the way the contract is currently written.
If they didn't get the CPI this year, they would lose that increment.
Correct.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, they'd have to ask under extraordinary, and then we would have the ability to say yay or nay. I mean, in my opinion, I mean, there's been a riser in there because there is definitely a cost increase, and it isn't something that everyone else gets. This is true, but it is the contract that this city did sign at some point, and so we are living under that. For something to be cognizant of. At the same time, I'm not at all in favor of anywhere near the 8.8, all in on the amount either. For myself, I would be looking for something that would be more in line with what historically, has transpired.
Right. I guess for me, I guess this is really this is what happens when economic weird stuff starts to go on, because I mean we didn't have any. I mean they do a great job, by the way. Okay, I'm perfectly happy. They do a great job, and we have a good relationship with them. And this is one of the challenges when you have a good relationship in business, and then the economy just sits on you for a couple of years. I don't think it would be intellectually honest to say, I agree with you, contract is contract, and we need to do that. But on the other hand, this is a vital service. It's well delivered by an organization that has been very useful and a good partner in the community. And so I don't think it's intellectually honest to just say, well, I'm sorry, you guys missed your deadline, and that, I would be open to having an increase of something.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying not to say no. I'm not saying to no. I'm just pointing out we've been dealing with this on a couple of situations here recently, so we just need to make sure that gets pointed out. And I mean, I understand that this is definitely an anomalous time period with dealing with this, and I'm not opposed to some sort of a rate increase. I mean, I would consider the average.
I wrote down 3.16%.
That's the average.
As what we were told was the average.
3.16%.
Yes.
is the average.
3.16, okay. That's all inclusive of PPI and CPI?
Yes, that was what we were told tonight by El Dorado Disposal, unless anybody thinks I'm wrong. That's what I wrote down when they were giving their presentation.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and the reason, my reasoning behind it is, of course, our base rate. We don't want to
Right.
jack our base rate up and then all of a sudden have a year where everything's down and then all of a sudden we're paying a high base rate. So, I mean, it would be easier, I believe it would be easier to do something like that. And then in the following year, if we start seeing that this was not an anomalous issue, then,
3.16.
another increase with maybe a little bump on top of that, being reasonable to our ratepayers instead of going, hey, guess what? It just went up 7%. Oh, the economy's back down. So sorry, your base rate's so high.
So-
I want to try and, protect them as much as we possibly can and still be considerate of EDD doing, such a wonderful job that they actually do, and being at least our honest side of dealing with contract also.
Yeah, so just Cleve has corrected me on the exact number. It is 3.136.
Okay.
So I was missing the 3.
Gotcha, okay.
And I was also incorrect. Last year was, I believe it says 6.5 was
Yeah.
the increase last year.
6.5.
Wait,
Yeah.
so, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Does this average include the 8.85 that is the proposed?
Yes, it appears that it does there.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Oh, so it's even,
It's a little bit lower.
It's a lower than that,
Yeah,
but-
if you throw out if you do international gymnastics, you throw out the high, the low, and average that, then, it might get around. I mean, we shouldn't be so cavalier. This is really important stuff. I'm sorry, I don't mean this.
yeah, it's like mean mode and median.
Yeah, there's a bunch of math in there.
So if you took out 2020, if we just averaged,
I mean, you're probably around 3%.
Yeah, it's gonna be
about
the same.
3%.
Yeah, because you're gonna take out a negative number.
Yeah.
And you're taking that out, and it'll be about the same. I don't think we shouldn't be splitting hairs on that. Personal feeling.
I would be comfortable with 3.136.
Okay.
I'm okay just going 3%.
I'm okay with that too. I mean, I think the one thing, there's agreement that, it sounds like there's agreement between us that there should be something in there
Yeah.
based on what we know to be increased costs, and other circumstances with fuel and wages that would necessitate an increase. The question is what that number is. I will.
Yeah, I messed up the number. So it's actually, if you want the actual average, but this does incorporate the proposed for this year, is 3.136. So I missed a 3. However, that also incorporates the 8.55 proposed in the averaging.
Right, so it would be
So
slightly
that's why
lower.
I'm saying it would be slightly lower, so an even number, 3%, may make sense in my mind.
I agree, because it's probably around that amount when you take out the 8.86. Does anyone want to take a stab at a motion? I mean, I'll say this too, before you do that, this is for EDD really, I really would like to have, after we do this, a conversation about the extraordinary, because again, like for myself, I will vote later on for something in the 14th year of another extraordinary expense, because there's just something broken with that system. So we need to fix that. And I don't know about everybody else, but I know for myself that needs to be fixed.
I agree with you. Okay. How are we with the conversation part of our show? Okay.
3% sounds.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve a 3% increase lawyer that up and
Sure,
make it.
so we're gonna
yeah.
have to amend the third recital in the resolution. And the third recital is going to have to be revised to state that whereas pursuant to said agreement, El Dorado Disposal is entitled to certain, actually it's not entitled, will receive certain adjustments based on extraordinary circumstances in the amount of 3%. And then your motion should say that Exhibit A attached to the resolution should be amended to reflect 3%. So you can, I'm sorry, so you can move the motion with my changes.
I'll move the motion with our attorney's changes to attachment A at 3%. Good?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
All right, we have a first and a second. Is there any more comments on this item? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for being here this evening. Okay, how are y'all doing? You want to, we'll do a quick.
Mayor, before you do that, can I mention, Mr. Zeller just mentioned too that our arborist, who is going to call in, has another appointment at 7 o'clock. I don't know what we can do about that at this point, because it'll probably take longer than that to get through, Terry.
He said that he could find a quiet place and break away from that. So if we take a break and then do 12.4, I think that'll
If we
still
take a
work.
break and then do 12.4, is that okay?
So we'll just move to
it up.
12.4 next?
If you could, please.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, so we'll take,
They're going to be here all night.
we'll take a 10-minute break.
They like us, they'll stick around.
We'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll reconvene at 7, and we will take up item 12.4. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Back to the drawing board here. All right. We're going to move to item 12.4. Do we need to make a motion to change the agenda here?
Yes, we do, because we did approve it in this order.
Which one are they?
Okay.
Which number is them?
They, 3. So we'll go right after.
Yeah, let's do 24, 20, 4, 3, 2. There we go.
5, 6.
All right, so someone want to make a motion to
I would-
amend the agenda?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to take 12.4 next, and then 12.3, 12.2, 12.5, 12.6.
I would like to second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, then, we are going to go to item 12.4, and that's to review the Arborist report from Forest Hill Forest Care to determine a course of action regarding the Redwood located at the intersection of Bedford and Main, really our holiday tree, our Christmas tree, and Mr. Zeller has this report for us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to go ahead and dial up Chad Dykstra, who's the arborist who authored the report, so he can hear my comments and better answer questions that I'm sure the council will have. So I'm going to take a second to awkwardly dial on this phone.
Understood.
This is Chad.
Hi, Chad. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start my staff report, and hopefully you'll be able to hear and listen in. I'm going to start, and then if we have any questions, I'll make sure that you're able to hear the questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this staff report is to provide the council with a summary of the report that was prepared by Foothill Forest Care, and for the council to determine a course of action regarding the 95-foot coast redwood known as the Christmas tree. So the tree is located on the northeast corner of Main and Bedford, and it's been used by Placerville as our official Christmas tree for many decades. And so On the heels of the recent drought, winter storms with low snow elevations and high winds hit the area and caused considerable damage to many of the city's trees, as I'm sure many of us have witnessed, including severe damage to the Christmas tree, both late in last year and then early this year. So after cleanup of broken and damaged branches, staff sought out consulting arborist Chad Dykstra to draft a report providing professional recommendations and options regarding tree management actions that could be taken considering the state of the tree. The report includes a level 3 risk assessment, descriptions and photos of the tree and the surrounding area, testing and analysis, discussion of the incident, damage and health of the tree, and the current tree risk. So in summary, the report states that the tree is in good health, but the current tree risk from branch failure is high. It also states that the current risk level can be managed through the tree's removal, pruning and treatment, or by constructing barriers between it and target areas to be protected. So if the tree is to remain, the balance of the lighting infrastructure will need to be removed, and any new lighting would need to be designed to not negatively impact the tree's health. So in staff's opinion, the use of the tree as the official Christmas tree will not be possible in the near term and may not be an option in the long term either due to its degraded aesthetics. Nevertheless, we're going to need to look at other options for a Christmas tree for our Festival of Lights coming up in November. So options for the council are to do nothing and continue to manage the tree in the same manner as the past, remove the tree, remove the branches, holiday lighting, and other infrastructure from the tree, and treat the tree with any future lighting designed not to impact tree health. And so costs that were outlined from Foothill based on the report and the different options were to the cost to remove the tree is estimated around $10,000, and that is not including provided traffic control from the city. And there is also a pruning and treatment option for year one that is totaling around $6,200 with an additional annual cost of around $2,500 for tree growth regulator and fungicide. So as far as budget impact goes, we will have to budget for the tree removal option for the 23-24 fiscal year, or the initial 6204 for this fiscal year coming up, and additional $2,500 for each consecutive year ongoing if the pruning and treatment option are chosen. Attached to the report, attached to my staff report, are the arborist report, and we also have the estimates for the removal and also the tree care. And I can take any questions and direct any of the council questions to Chad Dykstra, who's on the phone. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cherry, and thank you, Mr. Dykstra, for joining us telephonically. So I'm going to go ahead and ask if we have any questions at this time.
I have many, but I would like to ask one right now. There's a star on the top of the tree currently. Is there a quote unquote, I'm using quotation fingers, you can't see them. Is there a top on this tree? Does it have a leader?
Chad, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I think there is a central leader, but it has been cut back, and I think that ring or whatever that star is on has been put over it. So yes and no. There is it's got a strong central leader up there, but it's been managed and cut and such over the years.
So, I mean, so if I'm going to stay right off the bat. Obviously, we need to get all of the Borg components off of this tree. So all the Christmas stuff, the star, all the pie, everything that's up there, all the mechanical stuff has to come off. My personal feeling is it all needs to come off the tree. And then the question is, if the tree doesn't have a real top on it, if it doesn't have a really good strong leader, or if a limb, if you can't look up there and say, yeah, this limb is likely to become the leader, trees have all sorts of ways of dealing with things to their terminal. This tree's not going to get much taller. It's certainly going to get wider. So anyway, just something to think about in terms of the more total discussion. I have some questions for our attorney. I've got questions about lots of things, but that was the one I wanted to get to first because, in your opinion, this tree isn't likely to start growing vertically with any gusto, Mr. Dykstra.
So is the question?
Yeah.
Will the tree continue to grow vertically?
Yeah.
Yes, it will continue to grow vertically, but you're not going to see a tremendous an appreciable height gain. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of that. It's not
right.
An old plant that's more into the senescent part, and we're limited growth space on the root. I was mainly referring to sort of the lighting that went around that tree. The star is less damaging, I think, because it's fixed. It doesn't really move around. The other lights that have been attached over the years to the edges of the branches became a problem, both with girdling and then it's sort of domino effect. They got together and one hit the other and struck. So, I'm not saying we can't use the tree for those purposes. We just have to think about it as some kind of a significant redesign of what we're going to put on the tree. A little less damaging, I guess.
All right. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want everyone to consider an option 4. This is a pretty big part of our community, and it seems like a really big decision to make when it's only been brought forward once. I would like to see us have a neighborhood chat, I have questions, John has questions, I'm sure everyone has questions. Let's answer those questions. Let's be able to present that to community. Let's see what the community comes up with. So I just wanted to throw that out there. As far as questions, I'm wondering what this is going to look like when it's done. When you talk about pruning it, is it just going to be pruned in the middle? Are we going to be poofy on top, poofy on the bottom? Is it going to go all the way up? I don't know. I wanted opinions on whether we'll be able to hang Christmas lights again, and kind of touched on that. I mean, people have a lot of ideas about things we can do and not do, and it would be good to have like I said, a chat where we can talk about what's possible and what's not possible. Things I was wondering, like, have we tested the acidity of the soil? Is it the ideal for this coastal tree? Because we don't really grow coastal trees here. Are we committed in future years to putting more water into this tree? Because otherwise, if we have another 10-year drought, and I'd like to get some more estimates and opinions on the work.
Sure.
Also. Those are kind of my questions and thoughts to begin with.
Okay, I got a couple quick questions, and I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is, but I'm assuming these cracks we're seeing in the sidewalk are tree roots issue?
Sorry, the question was the cracks in the sidewalk was being caused by lifting, by tree roots, if that's your question.
Okay, so that's not going to stop.
No, that not really. That's not going to stop as the tree, not with the proximity. We could continue to root prune, probably do some. There are different types of hardscape that you may be able to put in there that has some adjustable nature to it. That put it in the expansion joints. It will take definitely some tweaking to keep the tree here. I can also speak from experience that I've worked on this tree for many years personally. I was involved when they were there doing the tree when the new sidewalk got put in, and also when some of those monuments got relocated. I think that the tree represents a pretty significant part of our community. So that's again my opinion. So I'd be loath to see it go. I also would want to mention a little bit about her question about pruning. We're going to do a very similar pruning job that we did in 2015. At least that's what I would recommend. So it's a similar type of pruning, keeping it mainly on the outer parts of the branches.
So
dead
on,
branches.
on that, Mr. Dykstra, so that type of pruning, just to follow up on the Vice Mayor's question. So with that, because I mean, when I look at it, and I stopped on the other side of Highway 50 just so I could like really take a good look at it, because the one side is essentially all sheared off. I mean, there's no limbs on the side facing the freeway. So that pruning, are you thinking that those limbs are going to eventually grow back in to match up with the other sides, or are you thinking about pruning back all of those? So I think to the Vice Mayor's question, you'd have a really full tree up on top, but there wouldn't be much after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I feel the question. I think it's intent there on how it's going to look. So no, I would not cut those things all the way off. Back to any branches that are there, unless they're broken back closer to where the parent trunk is, we'd leave those in that little hole area. And there, I'm thinking about it as more of an arborist, where in 50 years we won't be able to know that. But right now, for the next decade or decades, it's not going to look right. It's going to, so I don't know. It's a tree out of place just a little bit. That's a coast redwood that it should be down a little ways, but we got clobbered with a really heavy snowstorm, and I think that was some of the that's its liability to live here in Placerville. But I think the tree still is doing fairly well. I know it's sort of not real pretty, and it's unfortunate it lost sort of its side there on 50, but I'm still trying to be the Lorax and sort of speak for that tree as being still pretty enough a little bit there.
This happened once before, and Kathy, you might be able to help me. Anybody that's been here for a while, but my recollection was there was a storm that came in either in the 80s or the 90s, and I don't remember exactly, and it sort of did a very similar kind of damage. It kind of carved out a side, and I forget, but it kind of carved out part of the tree, and it wasn't quite as bad as this, but it did the same thing, and it took decades. And I don't think the city did anything, unusual. They just let the tree be a tree. One thing about redwoods, unlike other kind of conifers, is they'll start sprouting limbs. That's one of their survival techniques, and so they'll just start pushing out more limbs. But it does take some time. Now, we're all on a human time scale, and it's a tree time scale, and after so many decades, if it doesn't go the way of all things, yeah, it'll start to fill out again. It's really I do have some concerns though, and I did want to talk to, we have and I'm not trying to cut the tree down. Don't get me wrong. I love trees. I have a degree in forestry, although when I trim a tree, it's usually at the base, but I love trees. This is a great tree. But we also have to think about a couple of things. One is the base isn't going to get any smaller, those roots aren't going to get any smaller, and it's going to keep pushing the sidewalk around, and eventually it's going to start pushing the street around because redwoods are really robust trees. Hardly anything kills them. And then some group of us is going to be having this discussion 10 years from now potentially. It's not that I want to try to cut the tree down, but we need to be thinking ahead. The other thing too is we have a report that says things like, I should have had it open. And I understand the verbiage here, but we're also keepers of the public trust and public health and safety. Crown and branches, crown branch issues, broken hangers, weak attachments, visible cracks, overextended branches, topped. Okay. Main issue, weak attachment, fall distance 20 feet. Load on branch defects, significant. Likelihood of failure branches, imminent. Likelihood of impact crown branches, high. Likelihood of failure and impact branches, very likely. Consequences, branches, significant. Risk factor, high. Now, I had a discussion, an email back and forth with Cleve, and it says, well, this is really if another big storm event comes in. Okay, fine. That's all well and good. But it's now this part of the public record, and if somebody walks under that tree and gets whacked by a branch, what's our liability? Because now we have notice. We have a notice of a weakened tree. Once again, I'm not trying to cut this tree down, but we have a public health and safety concern. So tell me that it's not a big deal.
I love answering legal questions of
Good.
liability on the record. No, I don't. I don't. But unfortunately, because the tree is a public property and because it is on public property, and now we have received notice in the form of an arborist report that shows that there is a imminent threat of the branches falling down. There is a concern that the city could be exposed to liability if the branches fall and injure someone, pursuant to Government Code Section 830. So my strong recommendation tonight is if the council were to take action, the action should not be to do nothing. It should be at a minimum to take the actions that the arborist recommends, which are the branch, the pruning and so forth, because one of the exemptions to liability is to take reasonable efforts to mitigate the liability, and implementing those actions could be in response to that.
So my question was actually kind of along these lines too, but it's sort of a follow-up for the arborist of, if we do remove the lighting and do the recommended pruning of the tree, will that address the continued branch falling risk?
Yeah, thank you. That the question I think was, if we do the pruning, will it reduce? I think what you meant was the likelihood of failure of the branches there.
Yes, that's correct.
It will reduce. It will reduce the likelihood of them failing and hitting the sidewalk there. Out of all the years we've done it, I don't think there's been a lot of this happening. I mean, the branches shed in an extraordinary way this time, and the sidewalk is there. So the target is present. And I think there's mitigation in terms of branch removal that you could do, but that removes the risk probably to moderate. So that would be after pruning, we would do another risk assessment, and that risk rating would then be moderate, is what I would say. So I would say that would reduce the city's published liability, if you will.
Well, and I think to Mona's point, I think, and to the vice mayor's, I mean, I still see we're, to have a larger conversation, even if we decide to do some triage, if you will, expensive triage nonetheless, but a triage. I still think that's, yes, exactly. I still think there's probably other ideas out there that we may hear from folks.
I got an email from a constituent who suggested that maybe what we start to think about in terms of our holiday tree is doing what they do at the Capitol. They do it at the nation's capital. They do it all sorts of ways. Rockefeller Center. Somebody cuts down a really beautiful thing that looks like a Christmas tree, and they bring it in and they plop it somewhere in a nice visible place in town. You decorate it. It becomes part of our new tradition. I don't necessarily want to take this tree down, but I also think, we need to respect it as a living thing, and it is a tree, albeit one that doesn't grow here normally. But trying to make this into a silk purse might be real difficult, and I'm not so sure it does justice to the tree itself. And so, and I'm big on trees, and so I'd like to start to think about it that way, and then we just come up with a new way to deal with having this festival and all the stuff we do around the holidays associated with a tree, and make it a new thing, make it a new tradition, and kind of let this tree just sort of be for a while.
Well, and it sounds like that's, regardless of what we do,
Yeah.
that's going to be, it doesn't sound like this tree is going to be, I mean, we'd be risking legal jeopardy if we try to use it again this November as our tree. So sounds like it's on the disabled list for a while.
It's on the DL. It's on the active DL. We're just going to,
For a while anyways. I thought I just want to pause before, if we have more questions now. If not, I was going to go ahead and open up public comment. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up public comment on item 12.4. Thank you, Ryan.
Good evening, Ryan Carter again. There was a really excellent article in the Mountain Democrat about this tree back on April 24th. Talked about the history of this particular tree. They weren't 100% sure, hammering down its history, but the most likely was that it was planted in 1926 by Mrs. Lena Rance in memory of her husband, Dr. Stephen Rance. So we're talking about a 97-year-old tree. In 1937, Ernie Oppenheimer, Andy Anderson, and helpers from City Hall decorated the tree for the first time as a city's Christmas tree. It's been in use continuously since that point, since 1937 as a city's Christmas tree. When I was in high school, it was the condom tree. Every year we loved to make fun of it, but we still loved it. So it's been a part of everybody that's grown up here. It's been a part of our history and our memories from this. You know, its time as our community's Christmas tree has obviously come to an end for the foreseeable future. But you know, this tree has added immeasurable joy to the people of Placerville, and I think it needs to be respected. Don't destroy it just because it's no longer pretty. I think if we went around dispatching things that have lost their luster, I fear most of us in this room would also be on the chopping block. So yeah, let's, you know, there's plenty of opportunities for people in this community to donate a tree, donate decorations. We'll step up. The community will make this happen. Let this tree remain where it is, as, you know, an important part of everybody that grew up here. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Kathy Lishman. It really is heartbreaking to everybody to see what happened. I'm glad to hear that the tree is in good health. That is very important. And also that Mr. Dykstra has a long history with this tree. It's probably a good friend of his. It doesn't have to be the Christmas tree. I remember when we had the first downtown tree lighting, it was at the Caboose. And the big deal was the trees along Highway 50 to watch them go on. But then the Caboose area got too small for the crowds, and so it became the tree. I was concerned about the lights being left on it, and I think that's possibly, I'm not an arborist, what caused so much of the damage, that if the lights weren't on it, that wouldn't happen again. I'm in favor of trimming and treating it. I did talk to Carrie Fryer. Carrie Fryer is the one who designed and maintains and built the Monument Garden. Terry also does the bell tower, City Hall, the Ivy House parking lot, the Aquatics Center. And so I talked to Carrie about it, and because that's his garden there too. And he and I both agree that we should keep the tree for now and see how it does. It still adds a lot to the garden and the look and the feel of Main Street. Carrie had the idea that since the redwood tree is too damaged to use for a Christmas tree, he suggests that you take the bell tower and turn it into a Christmas tree. Not the one tree that was there when Ron Mueller was here that looked like something else, but to make the bell tower be the Christmas tree for the tree lighting. This is more than the tree lighting. It's really about the character of downtown. And having the bell tower be the tree would be something unique to Placerville. So my recommendation is to work with Mr. Dykstra, who has a history of the tree and obviously loves it, and trim it up and see what happens.
Thank you, Kathy.
Sue Rodman, Placerville resident. Good evening, Mayor and Council. When I first came to Placerville, it was more than 30 years ago. I thought that that was an amazing thing to have a Christmas tree for a city. And I was, like Kathy, was really glad to read that it is in good health. But I think making the bell tower a Christmas tree is not a bad idea. And I agree with Jackie, we need to have more than just a council discussion at one meeting to decide this. But I think we could at least decide that, have Chad do the pruning and do do what he has suggested for the health of the tree, and see where it goes. But take all the lights and stuff off. I don't know if the lights cause part of the problem in the wind or not, but I think keep the tree, but reduce the risk by doing the pruning and doing the injections, and see how it goes. Because, I mean, yes, coast redwoods were never meant to grow in the foothills. That's why they're called the coast redwoods, because they grow along the coast. And they don't grow this far south even. And certainly not at this elevation and inland this far. But we have one, and it's an amazing tree that's almost 100 years old. And there's no real reason to take it out unless it actually becomes a danger. And since it's healthy, and you could fix most of what's wrong with some pruning and some arborist treatments, I think that'd be the way to go.
Thank you.
Good evening again. I really like this arborist report. No nonsense, straight to the point, very professional. It was a refreshing report to read. And I would ask him and the tree lab in Camino their recommended species as a living Christmas tree, because they're not all the same. You need to find the right tree. You always need to consult an arborist before you go throw a bunch of decorations on it. Is this appropriate, or is it going to cause damage? Yeah, I should have spoken earlier, because one of my notes was turn the bell tower into a giant giant tree. I mean, we've turned it into a beer stein. We've turned it into other things. Or like Mr. Clergy said, bring in a living tree or a cut tree and put it right next to the bell tower. I understand the civic need to have that countdown and throw the switch with the street full of people. So the tree needs to be somewhere in this vicinity. Yeah. And nothing says that the Christmas tree has to be in that one spot on the corner. Christmas tree, you could do multiple trees. We have real nice ones at the intersection up here down by the caboose. But I understand the civic need to throw the switch and everyone ooh and ah. So if you might have time to turn the bell tower this year into a Christmas tree, or bring one in, and then it buys you time to, people will come, they won't hear about this at all. But if you cut that tree down, you might as well leave town when they show up this fall. So, but if you do an event like at the bell tower, you can survey them, look at the tree, you know, it's healthy, and it just needs to be retired. I mean, when the goat or Brett Favre retires, you don't kill them, right? They're retired, they go in the Hall of Fame, right? So, healthy tree, do the fertilizing, the pruning, let it live, and find another tree or location, and continue with a beautiful event. I mean, people come from everywhere for this event. And then when the tree finally goes, you know, use the redwood for civic uses, benches, whatever. I remember the city gave away all the old growth redwood that was sitting up at the city yard. Gave it, I think, to the high school, and they were supposed to make benches for the city. Did the city ever get a single bench from that fortune in redwood? I don't recall. But anyway, it deserves to live until God wants it. So let it be, and you find another tree for this year. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Kelly Chisano, local resident. Let's see. So I've seen the tree since I was a little kid, and I would like to see it stay for now, at least. I think that doing the pruning and doing the maintenance that is being suggested is covering liability and doing moving forward. I think maybe we use our social media and we reach out to the public and see for other options, locations, ideas. Real tree on the bell tower, real tree next to the bell tower, 3 trees at one at each end. I don't know, but I think if we do something now, it'll be too much, or if we cut it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Thank you, everybody, for those comments. I really appreciate that. Some really good, I think, good comments and stuff for us to think about. So I will bring it back to the council for further discussion.
I don't hear any discussion, so I'll make a motion.
All right, that works too.
Okay, somebody does have something.
Well, no, I don't want to. You know, it's transitions are difficult, and cutting down trees is difficult. Eventually, I think the Ponderosa, well, that one got spiked. The one at Ponderosa High School, didn't they get like tampered with or something? There used to be a really pretty giant sequoia over in front of the place on B Street there. So the Sequoia.
Oh yeah.
And it succumbed. It succumbed to the environment. I don't want to make a decision about the ultimate fate of the tree right now, and that would not be prudent. And I agree with Jackie that we should have a longer discussion. But you know, trees are organic things. They come and they go. They tend to live longer than we do, which is hard because then we think, well, we cut down a tree and it's gone and that's it. The tree is going to get wider at the bottom because that's what trees do when they're not growing up. They grow out. They don't do it real fast. It's not like it's all of a sudden going to be something. Could I get my picture? I did bring a picture. I provided a couple pictures, and if you could get that one, yeah, I think it's that one, or it might be, no, the other one. Please, the other one. I'm sorry. This tree is across the street from where I live on Shawn Drive. It's a Coast Redwood. It's probably not more than 40 years old because all these trees were planted and the houses were built in the 80s, so it's probably around 40. Yeah, it's hard to tell exactly, but my guess is that tree is almost as tall as the 85-year-old tree that's sitting out here right now. It looks like a tree, a traditional tree. This is the pleasing to the eye tree. This is what happens. Most redwoods end up looking like the thing down the road here, though, because they top out and then they just start going. They are susceptible to limb fall. This is just the nature of the redwood tree, because redwood trees live in forests. They don't live on the corner of Bedford and Main Street. So, you know, you've got that going on. I use that as an example because even that tree, because it's out by itself, it gets full sun. They actually pruned it up until about 1.5 years ago. That thing had limbs all the way down to the driveway. And they pruned it up probably for fire insurance or whatever. That tree is starting to get wide at the bottom. And you can tell if you know what a taper on a redwood looks like, that tree is starting to do this because there's no incentive for it to grow up. It's beautiful. These are organic things, and maybe this tree will continue to be a problem for the sidewalk. It'll start to become a problem for the street. And I don't say problem pejoratively like it's a conscious thought. It's not like it's out trying to be a problem. It's a tree, for criminy sake. It's doing what trees do. And I would suggest that maybe the discussion needs to be not how we save this particular tree. For all the reasons that we got up and talk about emotionally, I've been watching this tree grow for 47 years now. When they were probably decorating it back in 1930, it was probably 6 feet tall. And we might want to start to think about what would be a suitable, Mr. Drobich mentioned it, what would be a suitable replacement? Just a thought. I'm not suggesting, we're not going to do that today. And we're not probably going to do it tomorrow. We're not going to do it a year from tomorrow. But the tree is going to be something, and I think I remember that this tree's roots might have gotten into a water main. It's not the tree's fault. It makes roots. That's what they do. That's what trees do. But we might want to think about that, and maybe not have it be adversarial. It would be nice to have a conversation about a living thing that might just be a little past its prime and how to fix it. Maybe change it. Just a thought. I'm done. You were going to make a motion. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. But basically, my motion is to have that conversation in a neighborhood chat where we talk about all the aspects of this tree. We give the public a chance to weigh in. Perhaps also add to that the Christmas tree discussion, get people's input. You know, what do we want to do this year? It's not going to be there, so what does everybody want to do? I do think that we need to do the pruning. However, I would like to get 2 more estimates on that. I've had a lot of tree work done, and I could be wrong, but I think it's possible we can get a better price on that. That's my motion.
Yeah, I'm not so sanguine on the chemical treatments either. I think I'd like to see some mechanical work done, trim up the tree, kind of get it looking less like it does right now, and eliminate some of the hazards so we can speak to those things. The chemical treatments, I understand what they are and I know what they're due, and I think that's okay. But you know, you're also talking about now, you know, it's kind of like when your pet gets diabetes and you start giving them insulin every day, and you start to wonder about quality of life. And I want to just sort of think about that in terms of this tree. So I agree. I like what you're saying. Trim it. I'd kind of hold off on some of these other applications and get all the garbage out of it, you know, all the hardware.
Is staff clear
Is
on
that
our direction, or do
Well, so we have a motion and then we have a request for an amendment, so we
is
would
that-
ask.
is that what
I'll accept his amendment.
Okay, so we have a motion and then we need a second.
A second.
Okay, everyone clear on what we've put forward? Good?
Just quickly, though, there was a request that we get more quotes.
Yeah.
Do you want us to move forward with the trimming, though, once we have an acceptable quote? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'd like to give a recommendation.
So
for
just the
some of
trimming,
those.
not the chemical treatment at this time?
Right.
And then schedule a community chat to look at all options, basically?
Yeah.
Is that the motion? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Again, thank you, everybody, for your comments this evening and for the good conversation with my colleagues. Mr. Dykstra, thank you for calling in and giving us a lot of information as well as your report. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everybody. It was nice to be here.
Okay, so now we're going to
Thanks, Terry.
12.3. Okay, so item 12.3, consider a recommendation by the Cannabis Community Benefits Committee for project funding and provide direction to staff. And Mr. Morris has this report for us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, back in 2018, the city adopted an ordinance to allow retail cannabis businesses within the city. As part of that, and moving forward, we established a community benefit component of the ordinance, which required businesses to contribute towards a community benefit program. As we moved forward with that, it was decided that the businesses would contribute 1% of their revenues to this program, and that has taken place since the first one opened in 2021, Annie, right? Thank you. And since that time, you can see the report which is in there. We've collected approximately, we anticipate by the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, we will have collected approximately, let me get my numbers right here, to date we've collected 96,973. And we are collecting in the vicinity of $20,000 per quarter. So that gives you an idea. On an annual basis, we expect between $80,000 and $85,000 a year that we will collect from this program. Previously, the council appointed the Cannabis Community Benefit Committee, which includes 2 public members, the city manager, the community services director, and the police chief, and 1 representative from each of the cannabis businesses. And they are here with us tonight, Annie Aubrey and Kelly Chisano from our 2 cannabis businesses. I want to thank them for their participation, and also our public members, Benjamin Hawthorne and Catherine Sylvester have been great additions to that committee, and they've provided a lot of input, and we've appreciated their input also. So over the last couple of months, we've met on 3 different occasions now to come up with some recommendations. We presented a lot of projects, programs to the committee for consideration, and based on that information, they put together their recommendations to the city council for consideration. And I'll walk through those quickly. The recommendations that they have are, number 1, to repair the pool slide steps and deck at the Aquatics Center for a total of $15,500. To remodel the downtown bathroom and they are recommending 50% of the funding for that for a total of $25,000. To implement a school resource officer vehicle at a cost of $25,000, and I want to mention that that is only a portion of that cost. I may ask our chief to comment more on that if you have questions, but he has a plan for how we would fund the total vehicle for that. And I'll just mention quickly that if you think about back when they used to have the Deere vehicles, they would have those vehicles that were, unique paint jobs and styles and et cetera. This would be kind of along those lines. It's my understanding we're looking at a Jeep Rubicon for this particular purpose. The next project is they elected to give or recommended to give $5,000 to the Fire Safe Council for vegetation management programs, primarily to help seniors and those that can't afford to take care of their properties. They are recommending a $5,000 high school scholarship. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that it would be one scholarship for one person. It could be divided up 5 $1,000 ones. But anyway, to go towards scholarship programs for the high school, and we're working on exactly how that program will work. And then finally, they recommended a grant program for nonprofits for a total of $15,000. And again, that would be patterned after the nonprofit grant program the city implemented last year, with the exception of we had a limit of $1,000 per grant. They did not want to put a limit on it, so it could be that one applies for the total $15,000 and they could get that if it's a program that like. I want to mention along those lines, our request also that we wanted to make is that they would have the authority to administer and award those grants. So they would receive the applications, they would review those, make a recommendation or decide what was the appropriate grants, and they could actually award them rather than that come back to the council. Does not have to be that way. They could make recommendations and you could be the approval process for that if you would like to be. Total amount for those comes to $90,500. And then we implemented a contingency in case some of those city projects, if you will, go over budget. We put a 10% contingency in there of $9,050 for a total of $99,950. We project the amount available through June 30th of this year will be $119,135, which would then leave us a balance going into next year of $19,585 to go forward. So we think we went through some pretty good analysis on what was there. We looked at a lot of projects, and we hope to be able to fund more of those next year as we move forward with this. And we're asking for council recommendation. I also want to mention that Annie Aubrey is the chair of our committee, and if you have questions or if Annie would like to make any comments, she is here to do that also. So.
All right, thank you, Cleve. Yeah, Annie, if you wanted to make some comments, Kelly, if either of you wanted to make comments.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, it's been a great process so far. We had several projects that we reviewed together, and we all sort of gave our input on where we wanted to focus on. And some of the things that struck us, like we really liked the bathrooms because of how much that helped the community as a whole, and how right now a lot of the businesses have a hard time sending their patrons to the bathroom. Being that it's a big ask and it is prior to your guys' budget, we realize that that $25,000 may not be matched, or there might be other ways that we can fund the other part, or potentially look at that for next year. So we realize that's probably not something that's being spent right now, but it could be presented to you coming into your budget discussions. And we'd love to support that proposal with at least half of those funds. And then we want to do what we can for the seniors and the youth in our community. So that's why we focused on trying to get a vehicle that the police department can use within the teens and the Rubicon, and get out there and be active with them. And then the steps. We wanted to present this now because before the budget planning was partly because we wanted to get the pool in a certain shape prior to summer, and summer is right around the corner. And we also realized like college kids have likely missed their application deadlines right now, so we didn't put a ton there, but we're saving that to put into next year so that we can raise those funds and keep allocating money in that direction. I'm not sure what else I can think of that went on in our discussions, but that's sort of where our focus was trying to do something that would benefit the community, that would benefit the youth. Hopefully a lot of the grants that maybe can come in are going to be more senior focused potentially, but because we don't have those projects in-house coming from the city, we're leaving that $15,000 open to where we will have an inner committee that we will then interview applicants and create a frame for that going forward.
All right, thank you, Annie. Thank you, Kelly, as well. We really appreciate it, and the rest of the committee. There's a lot of thought I know has gone into doing this, so we appreciate those efforts. Questions from the council? Comments?
Well, I just want to throw this out considering recent developments, but we're going to need a lot of lights for Christmas. And if the committee wanted to consider, Christmas tree lighting as part of that.
It was on the list.
Oh, it was on the list. Okay. I just thought I'd throw it out there. Okay, no, I really appreciate that you both have brought businesses that have had no problems, no issues. Want to let you know that we appreciate you, and I'm fine with the recommendations, but I think we should take public comment.
Right. I'd just like to make a comment that, I was here in the before time, and this is the kind of thing when we were laying all this out, we created impossibly Byzantine application structure, which I think you can just pull every other page out now and you get to the same place. However, this is kind of what we were thinking about when this came up. And this is gratifying to see these kinds of things on here. The breadth of them, the kind of different things, the youth, the seniors, it's really cool. So good job.
All right. Any other comments? Yeah, I'll kind of the same thing. I think I was just getting on city council. In fact, I think it was my first meeting. And so it actually worked out the way I wanted it to, because I said, I think we should do 2. And that motion failed, but at the end of the day, it kind of worked out. So I'm kind of happy about that.
All the times we try to destroy this town, this actually worked out okay. We should get some props for this, I think.
There you go. All right. I will go ahead and open this item up for public comment. Oops.
Sue Rodman, a member of the Placerville Fire Safe Council, and like to express my gratitude to the Cannabis Committee for recommending $5,000 to go to our program to help with defensible space for people. And we concentrate on people who are disabled and elderly, who cannot do their own. And I've given the presentation to you guys as to how we have used the city's money. And I think an extra $5,000 from the cannabis community would help a lot more people. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Lishman. I think the list of projects is wonderful, and I bet it was a fun committee to work on, so I appreciate their work and the staff's work. When it first came up, the planning of it, I was concerned, and I still am, and maybe it's time to update it or get rid of it, the eligible projects program, where it has a bunch of projects and then it says other. I think it either needs to be expanded or have a different way of saying it, because it's listing specific things, but it's leaving out other things. Some of my questions were answered about how often this will happen, but anyway, so that's my recommendation, to change that list. And then the deal about nonprofits, that's the only way that the community gets a chance to make suggestions, and maybe there's a great suggestion that would come from the community that would be a community benefit, but it's not from a nonprofit, like maybe something the city should do. So I hate to see that limited to nonprofits. And as the chair of Friends of El Dorado County Seniors, I like the idea about seniors, but anyway, so that's, and social issues. I thought social issues would be a category that should be included too. Anyway, it sounded like a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, I saw that list in the ordinance too that says community benefits and and it gets down to other. You might as well just eliminate them all and just say any community benefit. Anyway, so you now have a new and unconsidered community benefit need, a tree and lights. So it looks like the resolution right now is just to fund the pool items, and you're going to be considering, if I'm reading the resolution that's already in the book back there, and they've been meeting quite regularly. You can throw this back to them to quickly consider, quickly, because between now and Christmas is very short for getting things put together. But that would be a huge benefit. I just don't want to see a giant banner on a tree by the bell tower that says "Brought to you by Pot," something like that. So, my recommendations. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Michael.
Evening, Ryan Carter again. Want to echo the comments. This is really a cool synergistic program that we have going here. It's really going to be beneficial down the road for our community to work together with these businesses and really raise these funds for us. The only issue I have, and it was brought up by Cleve, is this the business of the nonprofit grants. Nonprofits can get political on both sides of the equation. And I would be uncomfortable giving granting authority solely to the committee when you guys as a political body should really be making those decisions, because like I said, there are very political nonprofits on both sides of the spectrum that people would be uncomfortable with their money going to. And that conversation should be had with you guys here. So as a political decision, I think you guys should definitely have them bring those recommendations back to you to approve. Other than that, I think it's wonderful. This list of projects is awesome, especially the downtown bathroom. Thank you guys very much for your work on making these projects happen. But yeah, have them bring these grants to you guys for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Ruth Carter, City of Placerville, and I serve on a couple of boards that also contribute to scholarship funds. And there are 2 points that I wanted to make. So number one is that we have just about 200 different various nonprofits that already do scholarships, a lot of them multiple scholarships. and the kids are allowed to layer them. And so sometimes they'll end up with 4 or 5 scholarships, which is awesome. And I have nothing against that. I love that, and I love giving back. But I think that maybe some of the nonprofits that are going to be given funds will probably already be doing some of that as well. And so I think that maybe it might be better to place some of those funds, instead of in scholarships, in other community improvement projects, such as trees and lights, maybe. I love, again, like my husband was saying, with the synergy, the collaborative effort within our community here. I would caution on the nonprofits also that have PACs that are going to be donating funds to political causes. I think that they should be things that directly improve our community, such as the Fire Safe Council and, helping seniors. They are our forgotten charity, if you will, or our forgotten need in the community. And so many of them have fixed incomes and a lot of needs that are not being met. So my 2 cents is that I would try to reallocate those scholarship funds into something else that would be more of a community improvement and bring something back to our specific city of Placerville. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Chisano, Vice Chair of the Cannabis Community Cannabis Community Benefit Committee. I'm speaking as public comment, but I'll speak as the Vice Chair also. In our meeting, we did touch on what Kathy said, and we went back and forth on nonprofit, not nonprofit. What we didn't want to get into is individuals coming to us and asking for funds for more individual projects. So we weren't, correct me if I'm wrong, I felt like we were pretty open to, since we were doing an application process, we would be eliminating the political aspects, because that doesn't benefit, as in my view, the community. Everyone has their own political views and groups and things. So that wasn't part of that. So that would be part of us reviewing it, and I don't see that anybody in that committee would let something get through to that. But I think we were all open to if someone could come and act like a nonprofit and give us a presentation and show how it benefited the community. Yeah, and somebody that was responsive, because we didn't want, you get into an individual, and now this individual is getting funds, and do we ever see it back? Do we ever see the finish? What's the, how are you going to track down Joe Smith for said project that he's going to complete? But yeah, I want to thank all you guys for making this possible.
Thank you, Kelly. And I think, to Kathy's point, I think there's a way for us to deal with that in terms of, because I think, and I could be putting words in her mouth, but I hope not, is that, someone had a great idea that would benefit the community. They wouldn't be necessarily be doing it themselves, but it could be that it could be a city project at that point, and the city of Placerville could bring it forward as an individual project, and then that would deal with that. If you want to comment? Yeah, go ahead, come back up.
So we had a lot of discussions across the board at every meeting, and one of the suggestions was that a lot of times with grants, there isn't accountability, and we want to find that accountability. Who received the funds? What did they do? And they have certain check-ins throughout for these funds. Also, with the nonprofit, being that they can sponsor somebody or a student, so that the student, like I believe that happened here in Placerville, where somebody made one of the disc golf holes. They were sponsored. They applied for the grant, but a nonprofit was able to help them create the application and sponsor them, and the funds went to this youth in high school, and they were able to do this disc golf hole. It's more about the accountability and less about necessarily the credentials. There's also not a lot of money. When we look at all the list of things that need to be done, as you know, when you're voting up there on a weekly basis, even that 3%, might be small to some, it's large to others, but this $120,000 that we're looking at doesn't go very far, and so being that there's several of us with all these different ideas of where we want that funds to go, there's some that want it to go more into like the police arena, and then there's the scholarship arena, and there's the senior arena and the youth. And so we were really trying to be diverse in how we could help fill a little into each bucket with the little funds we have, and also have some savings for potential ideas that will be coming in, larger buy-ins, and if you could say, like things that might cost more. It was really hard for us to decide to put all of our money into one thing. You know, if it took this long to save it, when it's exciting at first. So we really do want to have as much impact as possible. And so I don't want to say that the tree lighting was off the table, but part of it was because it is a singular event. It isn't something like the bathrooms that help the community on an everyday basis. So that was sort of why that was a discussion point that of importance in the community box. So I'm happy to answer any more questions, but I just want to kind of touch on some of the comments and why they were definitely discussed within our circle.
Thank you, Annie. I appreciate the clarifications. I think so. Any other public comments? All right. Actually, I think we got everybody, so that was
nice.
That was good.
Somebody left to speak.
I'd like to just comment on the list. I mean, obviously, when we were starting this thing off, it was a little unknown, and we didn't know, and it was the best shot. We did that, and there's no doubt that it needs to be, it could be revised. I think with what we have in the ordinance, we got a nice collection of projects. My inclination wouldn't be necessarily change all that right now. Let's let it go for a year or two and see what we get. It's the same thing like with the nonprofits. I fully believe that the committee will be able to use their best judgment. And if some wackadoodle organization shows up and they kind of go, no, that's not, and we'll see. And then it could come to us. We could make the ultimate decision. I don't want to speak for my friends here. I like about the Christmas tree. I will state this here because we did it when there was a bunch of things that happened. That Christmas tree, because we went out, myself and our engineer and Dennis Thomas and Matt Vierkamp. In one day, we did an assessment because we were trying to figure out what to do with lights. This was several years ago. And I think within a day, we had all the lights paid for that ended up going across Main Street, and new lights for the tree. I have absolutely no doubt that this tree will happen however we decide, unless it's like made out of platinum or something. But if it's a tree and you put lights on it, that's going to get paid for. I'm not worried about that in the least. So, I mean, it's nice to talk about it, and you made it. I think you made good. This is good. This is real good. Anyway, I kind of let's let it sit for a while. Let's let it do its thing, and then go.
Yeah, I was just going to make, with regards to some of the comments, and I had kind of asked Cleve this in private, but I didn't highlight it. We were talking about the high school scholarships, we were talking about city residents, we were talking about the nonprofit projects. We were specifically saying things that would benefit the city of Placerville. It's not explicit there, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that is the conversation we had. With regards to the nonprofits, if you do a 501c3, then they're not allowed to be political. But on the other hand, I was thinking about what Kathy said. When I reviewed all the applications for the grants last year, we did have some applications, like someone submitted a grant that they wanted to repaint the Snowshoe Thompson. He was the original painter. He was willing to repaint it. And so, but he wasn't a 501c3, so you could possibly lose out on opportunities like that. Fortunately, the Historical Society submitted another application on his behalf, and we were able to do that. I'm confident that our committee can make those decisions. I don't feel like it needs to come back to council. It's not that much money, and I have a lot of confidence in our committee. We have 3 staff members, we have the 2 Cannabis, and we have 2 members of the public. It's a pretty well-rounded committee that I feel confident in their ability to go ahead and administer that. I don't know how everyone else feels.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Just a clarification, Mr. Drobish, I mentioned about the resolution only approving the 2 projects. We're actually asking to approve all the projects. We're just allocating the funding for those 2 in this year's budget. The other funding will be allocated in next year's budget. That's because we want to try and get those pool projects done as soon as possible with the season. So I just want to clarify that item.
Understood. Thank you.
I also feel comfortable with, delegating authority to our committee to essentially evaluate the grants. I guess my only thought is maybe allowing for an appeal process if somebody really thinks something was out of line, that we would still see it, because we obviously allow that in sort of other commissions and committees.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think there will be. I have total trust in you guys. But, that would address that concern.
I like that.
Yeah, I just want to say you guys have done a fantastic job. I mean, it was great being a part of this to help select committee, with the public members, and what you guys have come up with is absolutely fantastic. So just nice job.
All right. So does anyone want to?
I'll move the staff recommendation, which is to pass the resolution and approve the list of projects that we receive from the committee.
Do you want to add the appeal?
And we'll add the appeal process so that the disgruntled will have a place to go. So we can take care of their gruntlement.
I'm just going to assume that's in here, that the motion includes that the committee has the authority to approve the grant, and then the appeal process, because that's not actually in the resolution, but anyway, so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll second that.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion on the item? All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye. All right, thank you. Thank you both for sticking out for us. I know it's a little bit longer tonight than usual, but so we appreciate it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can stay if you want to. Yeah. Yeah, you're more than welcome to stay.
We're going to start spending money now. We're buying big trucks.
All right, so we're going back up to item 12.2, which is consider requesting $110,890.36 in financial assistance from El Dorado County for the 2023-2024 fiscal year to help offset the maintenance costs associated with providing a comprehensive aquatics program at the Aquatics Center. And Mr. Zeller has the report for us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a repeat action from what we had established last year, but it does have an updated cost request for financial assistance from El Dorado County for our upcoming fiscal year. And they're of course doing their budgeting right now. And so the request in the staff report is to adopt a resolution with this updated amount in financial assistance from El Dorado County for the 23-24 fiscal year. And this has been to offset some of the maintenance costs associated with providing our aquatics program. It was established, I believe, in 2019 through a survey that around 76% of the people who utilize our aquatics center reside outside the city limits in unincorporated Placerville or the county. And we have had a good history of support from the county because of this fact, even if it wasn't made clear as far as the percentage. Ever since the fiscal year 13-14, we've received $20,000 in offset costing for our maintenance. And there was actually a 5-year agreement that was formalized between the city and the county in 2016 that carried that $20,000 help forward. And that agreement ended in 2021. The county did ask for the city to going forward to provide an annual resolution with a requested amount, and the amount is based upon work that I did on a spreadsheet, which is attachment B to your staff report. It's updated with the 2021-22 adopted budget and expenses in there. And so last year we sent a resolution to the county in the amount of $112,568. And the Board of Supervisors reviewed that and reduced the amount based on their interpretation of the maintenance costs and approved $76,500 in funding assistance for that past fiscal year. So we are following the same protocol that we did before, and our updated cost based upon the average of the years starting in 2014-2015, which is what the spreadsheet shows, has updated our cost to around $110,890.36, and that's 76% of our overall costs. And so as far as options, the council can approve this requested amount in funding assistance and send that resolution to the county for their consideration. The council can take no action or approve a revised amount based upon discussions here tonight. And I can take any questions.
All right, thank you, Terry. Any questions? No questions. All right, we'll go ahead and open up this item for public comment.
I don't know how you've spoken with the county on this issue over the years, but I'm sure they realize that if there is not a mutual benefit in terms of money, the city would be forced to do a tiered system for pull fee use. Resident and non-resident is just the facts. So our infrastructure, although I won't mention other, but anyways, that's just a nice little kind note. Somebody can write it much nicer than I would. And just a reminder, if we can't make this happen, we're gonna have to do a tiered fee system.
Thank you, Michael.
Sue Rodman, Placerville. A large portion of the people who come and use the Aquatics Center are county residents, not city residents. So it's only fair for the county to pitch in and help. And I think if they didn't fulfill what we asked them for last year, they may not give us everything we asked for this year, but if we don't ask, we know we'll get nothing.
Very true.
So, yes, we need to ask them for what we think is actually fair, and they should contribute.
Thank you, Sue.
Kathy Lishman, I wasn't going to comment on this, but some of them might think that we should charge more for county residents, but we know in the past from having done that, it doesn't work out, that you get less attendance possibly, so.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, I'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council.
I'd just like to say I was on Park and Rec for 9 years, and for those 9 years, we only got $20,000 every year. So last year was a big step up. It's a start in the conversation, and I think we're moving in the right direction with that.
And getting that 20 grand was pulling teeth. And there was a year they didn't give us anything. And so this situation, when I read this, I go, oh, wow, that's how they do that now. That's amazing, because before, nothing. I would like to move the staff. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm kind of taking over here. I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Do we have any other comments on this item? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Terry. Go get that money. All right, now we're going to go back to our regular order here into item 12.5, which is a awesome item, which is consider approving an agreement with Owen Equipment for the purchase of a 2023 Vactor truck. And Mr. Stone has this report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item before you seeks approval of a purchase agreement with Owen Equipment for a 2023 Vactor truck. Vactor truck is currently used by Public Works Department for many activities such as cleaning up sewer spills. While crews work to restore flows, it's also equipped with a high-pressure water jet that staff use for minor excavation activities as a much more efficient alternative to hand digging and also safer to use in areas where a backhoe might jeopardize other utilities in the ground. Our current Vactor truck is a perfectly functioning 2008 model that staff have taken excellent care of over its service life with the City of Placerville. In 2021, staff was notified by the California Air Resources Board that we would need to either retrofit our current Vactor truck with a 2010 newer engine to meet emissions requirements or sell it out of state. The purchase of this new Vactor truck was approved as part of the 2022-23 budget. Staff were able to locate a 2023 Vactor through Owen Equipment under the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program. The new Vactor truck would be purchased under the master lease agreement, and delivery is anticipated to be early this summer if approved. And a big thanks to Assistant City Manager Mr. Warren for his assistance in this and making it possible under the master lease agreement. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stone. Questions? Yes.
Besides the fact that carb is the evil spawn of Satan,
thank you.
Can we sell this truck like out of state?
That's what we anticipate
Oh,
doing.
very good. Okay, thank you. You answered my question. Did he say that before? God bless America.
And further expand on that, I was looking at some estimates today through auction services. We're estimated to get probably only about $60,000 for it, but it's better than nothing. So
yeah, it's pretty good still.
And I'm sorry I missed it.
Is there, I had a question related to that, in that since we are purchasing a brand new equipment, does CARB have, is there any rebates or anything that CARB is doing that we might be able to claw some funds back?
Oh, sorry. We looked into a bunch of different programs that they had, and it didn't seem like any of them would meet those requirements.
Of course not. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in 3 years we're gonna have to have an electric one or something.
We also looked into electric options because there was some programs that came out from CARB and for other electric heavy trucks like garbage trucks and things of that nature, but there wasn't, because the Vactor is a specialized piece of equipment with all the pumps and motors and everything else that go along with it, there wasn't anything that met those requirements.
It lasts for like 6 minutes and then we have to bring on the Vactor replacement.
Behind it,
yeah, exactly. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I will open this up for any public comment.
Anybody want to comment on our carbs?
Yeah, hopefully you all heard what CARB ruled recently and really understand the financial impact you're looking at over the next 12 years. And different types of vehicles have different types of lifespans, and you need to try and time it so you're not needing to buy something 8 years from now when every other jurisdiction is panic buying and the prices go through the roof on all this equipment. It really is, and I thought, what are you going to do with the old truck if you're not going to get enough money for it? Maybe you can find a program where they can, it'd be a test bed to turn this specialized equipment into an electric vehicle, hopefully with no cost to us as a city. Otherwise I see you're just going to have a trailer of batteries the size of a tank to run all this. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's actually just going to destroy the state. There's no way financially jurisdictions. We lose our hook and ladder truck. How do you service your high-rise buildings? Hotels. You can't. The implications are insane. So just the timing, and also where going forward with all this equipment, the city's going to have to replace police cars, everything, backhoes, everything. Where are all the charging stations going to be? How is the electric infrastructure going to be moved around? So, got to start the discussion now.
Thank you, Michael. And any other comments? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close public comment. I mean, Michael, I agree. I mean, I think the safe thing, the one thing I can say is that everyone that is in the office right now will not be in office in 2035, and so they will have pushed that problem onto somebody else. And like I said, I think I've said this before, my crystal ball says whoever is governor in 2035 is going to push out the timing even longer, because we're nowhere near that amount. But it makes for good headlines today for a certain crowd, so I digress. Okay, bringing this back to council. Any other comments, or I'll entertain a motion?
Who wants to buy it?
I'll move to adopt approve the agreement per the staff report.
I'll second the Vactor motion.
All right, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye. All right. On the same type of line, item 12.6, consider an agreement with Pape Machinery for the purchase of a 2023 John Deere excavator. And Mr. Stone has this for us again.
Good evening, Mayor and Council again. Currently, Public Works staff does not have a mini excavator. Our primary machine for digging and excavation work is one of the two case backhoes that we have. Backhoe's much larger machines, probably about twice the size of this mini excavator. And it's also wheeled, so it's not able to be utilized in tight spaces such as backyards or on steep slopes and uneven terrain. The smaller machinery with tracks is an ideal piece of equipment for those scenarios. Currently, whenever we have a need for a piece of equipment like that, we either rent it or end up doing things such as hand digging and removing and replacing fences in backyards. So the addition of this mini X will be it'll improve for efficiencies and safer excavations. And the purchase of the mini excavator was approved as part of the 2022-23 budget process, and staff expect delivery of this machine early summer if approved. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
All right, thank you, Nick. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Any public comment on this item?
Sue Rodman, a mini backhoe really is a great piece of equipment to get in when you've got to dig trenches and you don't want to dig them by hand. It takes a lot longer to dig them by hand, and it's more expensive in the long run. And it's a lot safer to do it with something that has little tracks on it than to try to take wheels into some of the places that we need to dig trenches in Placerville. Placerville is not flat ground. We're not the Central Valley, so we need to be able to maneuver in some pretty tough places. So I think this is sounds to me like a good piece of equipment to have, because they may not always be available when you need to rent them either. And by the time you've rented it several times, you might as well have bought one.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further public comments, I'll bring this back to the council. Any further discussion, or I'll entertain a motion?
I would like to move the adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Pape Machinery in the amount of that much money for the purchase of a 2023 John Deere 35G excavator, approving the $1,444 budget appropriation from the general fund, unassigned fund balance, approving a $1,445 budget dollar appropriation from the Water Enterprise Fund contingency for unforeseen expenditures, and approving a $1,445 budget appropriation from the Sewer Enterprise Fund contingency for unseen expenditures for the said purchase of the said mini excavator.
I second.
All right, first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Gottberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Yarbrough?
Aye.
Vice Mayor No?
Aye.
Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Let's go get those machinery. Awesome, love it. I want to drive the Vactor.
The Vactor. I want to, the Vactor.
I can do a straight street on that, I think. All right, we'll move on to item 13, which are council reports from other agency meetings, and we'll start with Transit Authority.
We had a workshop for short-range transit plans.
Yes, they did. Okay.
Okay.
Transportation Commission?
Yes.
We received the final report on the trip to green and accepted it or adopted it or whatever. And it is fascinating. You should read it. People should really dig into it, mostly because of some of the data and the information that's in that report about traffic in Placerville. And what's really interesting about traffic in Placerville is between the weekends and the weekdays, there's almost no difference in the traffic volume. It goes up just a hair over the weekends. It's the mix of traffic. It goes from drive-through and tourist traffic on the weekends to working and shopping and jobs traffic, but the amount of traffic in this town doesn't change at all. It would be great to dive into that. It's from metadata kind of stuff. It would, at least for me. I'm a transportation. Yeah, it would be fascinating. Anyway, we accepted it, and we did ask the person to come here and do a report to the council so that y'all could see it. And then, of course, there's next steps. There's a bunch of next steps and what we're going to do. But it's a good foundational document. It has a lot of good stuff in it. And we'll have some interesting discussions about what's next when it comes to Trip to Green. And that was it. That was the big thing. There was a bunch of other stuff. I mean, the meeting was like 35 minutes long.
All right. LAFCO.
Yeah,
Didn't meet.
Yeah, we didn't meet.
All right. SACOG, we meet next Thursday. Pioneer.
We didn't have a regular meeting, but myself and Mr. Rivas met with Pioneer Energy and Board of Supervisors Director Hydal and Director Parlin and their staff to discuss some of the upcoming issues that we have with SB 1383, which you all will be hearing about next meeting.
All right. Thank you, David. Fire Safe Council.
They're doing a whole bunch of stuff. Holy cow. You sit in those meetings and your head spins because they have so many people doing so many different things. But they're getting ready for the upcoming season with their grants to help seniors, outreach. They've been going to doing a lot of outreach and starting to figure out how to organize for the Firewise communities.
All right. Thank you. 2x2, we didn't have any meeting with the county. Opportunity Docs.
Yeah, so we have a couple of things. One is we approved issuing emergency housing vouchers, process for the next month while we develop a longer term. We voted to establish 4 committees that we're currently doing appointments to for board members and their alternates, if Commissioner Yarbrough is interested in any one of them. One that I think we need city representation on is the moratorium of moratorium MOU. I'm just going to say MOU. Yes. Yes, it's late and I've long day for me. The MOU for the temporary navigation center, including developing the referral process. So I think we'll want somebody on that representing the city's interests. So, and then the other one that may be of interest was the funding committee. So essentially establishing the budget for that. And we will be hearing in our next meeting in this month, or yes, maybe next month, I'm not sure. Basically, the next meeting we have, we're going to end up hearing the permanent navigation center MOU. So again, I think, terms and conditions in that are important for us.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Nicole. And you're right. We have to stay on top of that.
Yeah.
This is in our backyard, so we need to know what's going on. Okay. I will go ahead and open up item 13 for any public comment.
Sue Rodman, on the Transportation Committee and the fact that the traffic does not change very much. And when they were here talking to us about the trip to green, I pointed out to them that the population of Placerville almost doubles Monday through Friday. And so you're absolutely right. Your weekend traffic is mostly tourist traffic, and your weekday traffic is people coming to work. And he was quite surprised to realize that. So keep him on it.
Thank you, Sue. All right, I'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to item 14, requests for future agenda items. I did have one from the beginning, which was I'd like to invite the county or to come to one of our council meetings to talk about the what's going on at the Navigation Center and to give us an update and for the public to hear that as well. Yeah. If that's agreeable to everybody. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'd like to discuss at some point moving the dais that way. I haven't given up on this.
I keep expecting to come over the weekend and see that you've done it.
I know I'd get arrested. The chief would arrest me and whatever. No. I understand, but this is it. I get over there, but man, if you're over there, those people, no, I'm not kidding. I want to move this damn thing.
Yeah.
That's it. Sorry.
Okay. Anything else? All right, no. All right, so we'll go on and move to item 15, which are city manager and staff reports, and item 15.1, which is our police report. And Chief Friend.
Good evening. As the weather starts to get nice outside, you'll start to see these numbers increase. There's been a slight increase in several categories. One thing I do want to highlight is, with the calls for service that we had last month, our officers are averaging about 3 calls per hour for the whole month. 730 hours, I think, is in a month. So they're staying busy, and they're still providing that quality law enforcement experience that the community expects. What I'm most proud of is they're still keeping their response time for priority 1 calls under 4 minutes, which again is pretty unheard of. That's about it. I'll have more for you. Some really good things happened at the beginning of this month, and I wanted to share, but I don't want to steal my thunder for next month. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions?
I don't have a question. I have a comment. A person came up to the podium early in this meeting and made comments about PD and that they were harassing people, and I don't believe that for a minute. I know these people. We have highly professional policemen and policewomen, police people, police persons. Anyway, it wasn't the time to do it because then you just start an argument. But I don't believe for a minute that this is going on. So. I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's BS. And if they had proof, they'd have given it to us. If they had proof, it would have been on social media. This idea that there's like videos and stuff floating around there is nonsense. Because if they had it, it'd be out there. They don't have it, and they're just talking.
At the risk of commenting to validate his point, we hear this from him pretty regularly. In the last 7, 8 years, I've heard the same accusations and the same indication that he has some sort of evidence. Love to see it, never can produce it. All of our officers are equipped with body-worn cameras. So I'm with you. I don't believe it. And it takes everything. And I try not to take it personally. I know my troops really don't care about what he says, but I see the good work that they do just every day, and it just irritates me to have somebody from the peanut gallery make comments that are just so ridiculous. So I think I did a pretty good job. I may have winced a couple times or bit my tongue, but I didn't blurt anything out like I wanted to.
Thank you, Chief. All right, any other comments? Any public comments on item 15.1? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Chief. We'll wait for the updates at the next meeting. All right, so we'll move on to item 15.2, which is our fire report, and Chief Cordero. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. And yes, I would echo. I think the police department, their officers, we work with them daily, and nothing but good to say about them. Great staff. So thank you, Chief Wren. For the crews at 25, have been busy. Last month, calls really picked up. Last week, we did complete our annual swiftwater rescue training. That's a multi-company, actually multiple departments across the county. A little heightened awareness this year just because of the snowpack and the expected high flows are going to last longer than normal. So the crews really got some great training last week. Next week you'll see engine companies and medic units going to the Ray Lawyer site for our annual wildland fire refresher training. That's a mandated refresher, and as we get geared up for fire season, which will be a little bit delayed, but it's coming. We've already had several escape control burns and things that have gone several acres already. So with that, all the stats are there. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Any public comments? All right, seeing none. All right, well, thank you again, Chief Cordero. And we will move to item 15.3, which is a new item that we are now incorporating into staff reports, and that is the Development Services Department's permitting statistics for the month of March and April. And Mr. Rivas has this report for us.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Development Services has long appreciated the reports that have been generated by Chief Wren and Chief Cordero. So, you know, we sort of thought that because of the activities that we're engaged in, that maybe we should also provide monthly stats to the city council, basically just showcasing our activities, what goes on. So when you look at it, the way we've sort of done it is, and we're providing stats for both planning, building, and the code compliance divisions. And so at the top, we'll start with a planning summary where we'll just list the projects that have been submitted for that month for planning and for building. And then some very excellent graphics, and these graphics are not because of me. We have some very good staff that we have recently acquired that have just an immense command of the computer to be able to do these things that I just can't do. So I really appreciate it, and I just want to highlight that. So what we've done is we will compare the number of permits that have been issued or finalized for the particular month compared with the previous year. We do that also for inspections, and then we've listed some graphics that shows the type of permits, building permits that we've issued for the month. And the next page, we also have some, like I say, just fantastic pie charts, active cases, code compliance cases, and then we have a table that shows all the cases that have been received by month, and we'll do that so we can show it for the whole year. And at the bottom, then we show the revenues that we've been bringing in, both graphically and by a pie chart. So, yeah, hopefully these reports are comparable to what we see from both fire and police. Happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
All right, thank you, Pierre. Are there any questions? Yeah, I just have to say, I mean, this is really good, and I think this is, you know, very helpful to the public to see kind of what's going on as well. So appreciate the idea and for bringing this forward. So with that, I will go ahead and open up for any public comments on this item. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back. So again, Pierre, thank you to you and your team for this report, and looking forward to this as we move forward. So thank you.
You're very welcome, and I'll pass that along to the staff.
Definitely. All right, that brings us to upcoming items, item 16, and I'll let people read through those. So at 8:43, we will adjourn this meeting, and we'll be right back here tomorrow for our first budget meeting at 5 p.m. So if you all can make it out, we'd love to see you tomorrow as well. Thank you, everybody. Good night.